girl. On a Wednesday night, another girl who I meet at MK and I plan to torture and film. This one remains nameless to me, and she sits on the couch in the living room of my apartment. A bottle of champagne, Cristal, half empty, sits on the glass table. I punch in tunes, numbers that light up the Wurlitzer. She finally asks, "What's that smell in here?" And I answer under my breath, "A dead rat." And then I'm opening the windows, the sliding glass door that leads out to the terrace, even though it's a chilly night, mid-autumn. And she's dressed scantily, but she has another glass of the Cristal, and it seems to warm her enough so that she is able to ask me what I do for a living. I tell her that I went to Harvard, then started working on Wall Street at Pierce & Pierce after I graduated from business school there, and when she asks, either confused or jokingly, "What's that?" I swallow, and with my back to her, straightening the new Annika, find the strength to force out, "A shoe store. I did a line of cocaine I found in my medicine cabinet when we first came back to my place, and the Cristal takes the edge off it, but only slightly. The Patty Winters show this morning was about a machine that lets people talk to the dead. This girl is wearing a wool Barathea jacket and skirt, a silk georgette blouse, agate and ivory earrings by Stephen Dweck, a silk jacquard torselette vest, all from where? Charivari, I'm guessing. In the bedroom, she's naked and oiled and sucking my dick, and I'm standing over her, and then I'm slapping her in the face with it, grabbing her hair with my hand, calling her a fucking whore bitch. And this turns her on even more, and while lamely sucking my cock, she starts fingering her clit, and when she's asking me, "Do you like this?" while licking at the balls, I'm answering, "Yup, yup," and breathing hard. Her breasts are high and full and firm, both nipples very stiff, and while she's choking on my cock while I'm fucking her mouth roughly with it, I reach down to squeeze them, and then while I'm fucking her, after ramming a dildo up her ass and keeping it there with a strap, I'm scratching at her tits until she warns me to stop. Earlier in the evening, I was having dinner with Jeanette at a new northern Italian restaurant near Central Park on the Upper East Side that was very expensive. Earlier in the evening, I was wearing a suit tailored by Edward Sexton and thinking sadly about my family's house in Newport. Earlier in the night, after dropping Jeanette off, I stopped at MK for a fundraiser that had something to do with Dan Quayle, who even I don't like. At MK, the girl I'm fucking came on to me hard, upstairs on a couch while I was waiting to play pool. "Oh, God," she's saying. Excited, I slap her, then lightly punch her in the mouth, then kiss it, biting her lips. Fear, dread, confusion overwhelm her. The strap breaks and the dildo slides out of her ass while she tries to push me off. I roll away and pretend to let her escape, and then, while she's gathering her clothes, muttering about what a crazy fucking bastard I am, I leap out at her, jackal-like, literally foaming at the mouth. She cries, apologizing, sobbing hysterically, begging for me not to hurt her, in tears covering her breasts, now shamefully. But even her sobs fail to arouse me. I feel little gratification when I mace her. Less when I knock her head against the wall 4 or 5 times until she loses consciousness, leaving a small stain, hair stuck to it. After she drops to the floor, I head for the bathroom and cut another line of the mediocre coke I scored at Nell's or O-Bar the other night. I can hear a phone ringing, an answering machine picking up the call. I'm bent low, over a mirror, ignoring the message, not even bothering to screen it. Later, predictably, she's tied to the floor naked on her back, both feet, both hands, tied to makeshift posts that are connected to boards, which are weighted down with metal. The hands are shot full of nails, and her legs are spread as wide as possible. A pillow props her ass up, and cheese, brie, has been smeared across her open cunt, some of it even pushed up into the vaginal cavity. She's barely gained consciousness, and when she sees me, standing over her, naked, I can imagine that my virtual absence of humanity fills her with mind-bending horror. I've situated the body in front of the new Toshiba television set, and in the VCR is an old tape, and appearing on the screen is the last girl I filmed. I'm wearing a Joseph Abboud suit, a tie by Paul Stewart, shoes by J. Crew, a vest by someone Italian, and I'm kneeling on the floor beside a corpse, eating the girl's brain, gobbling it down, spreading gray poop on over hunks of the pink, fleshy meat. "Can you see?" I ask the girl not on the television set. "Can you see this? Are you watching?" I whisper. I try using the power drill on her, forcing it into her mouth, but she's conscious enough, has strength to close her teeth, clamping them down, and even though the drill goes through the teeth quickly, it fails to interest me, and so I hold her head up, blood dribbling from her mouth, and make her watch the rest of the tape. and while she's looking at the girl on the screen bleed from almost every possible orifice, I'm hoping she realizes that this would have happened to her no matter what. That she would have ended up lying here, on the floor in my apartment, hands nailed to posts, cheese and broken glass pushed up into her cunt, her head cracked and bleeding purple no matter what other choice she might have made. That if she had gone to Nell's or Indochine or Mars or Albar instead of MK, if she had simply not taken the cab with me to the Upper West Side, that this all would have happened anyway. I would have found her. This is the way the earth works. I decide not to bother with the camera tonight. I'm trying to ease one of the hollow plastic tubes from the dismantled Habitrail system up into her vagina, forcing the vaginal lips around one end of it, and even with most of it greased with olive oil, it's not fitting in properly. During this, the jukebox plays Frankie Valli singing The Worst That Could Happen, and I'm grimly lip-syncing to it while pushing the Habitrail tube up into this bitch's cunt. I finally have to resort to pouring acid around the outside of the pussy so that the flesh can give way to the greased end of the Habitrail, and soon enough it slides in, easily. I hope this hurts you, I say. The rat hurls itself against the glass cage as I move it from the kitchen into the living room. It refused to eat what was left of the other rat I had bought it to play with last week that now lies dead, rotting in a corner of the cage. For the last 5 days I've purposefully starved it. I set the glass cage down next to the girl, and maybe because of the scent of the cheese, the rat seems to go insane, first running in circles, mewling, then trying to heave its body, weak with hunger, over the side of the cage. The rat doesn't need any prodding, and the bent coat hanger I was going to use remains untouched by my side, and with the girl still conscious. The thing moves effortlessly on newfound energy, racing up the tube until half of its body disappears. And then after a minute, its rat body shaking while it feeds, all of it vanishes, except for the tail. And I yank the Habitrail tube out of the girl, trapping the rodent. Soon even the tail disappears. The noises the girl is making are, for the most part, incomprehensible. I can already tell that it's going to be a characteristically useless, senseless death, but then I'm used to the horror. It seems distilled. Even now it fails to upset or bother me. I'm not mourning, and to prove it to myself, after a minute or two of watching the rat move under her lower belly, making sure the girl is still conscious, shaking her head in pain, her eyes wide with terror and confusion, I use a chainsaw, and in a matter of seconds cut the girl in two with it. The whirring teeth go through skin and muscle and sinew and bone so fast that she stays alive long enough to watch me pull her legs away from her body, her actual thighs, what's left of her mutilated vagina, and hold them up in front of me, spouting blood like trophies almost. Her eyes stay open for a minute, desperate and unfocused, then close, and finally, before she dies, I force a knife uselessly up her nose until it slides out of the flesh on her forehead, and then I hack the bone off her chin. She has only half a mouth left, and I fuck it once, then twice, 3 times in all. Not caring whether she's still breathing or not, I gouge her eyes out, finally using my fingers. The rat emerges head first. Somehow it turned itself around inside the cavity, and it's stained with purple blood. I also notice where the chain saw took off about half of its tail, and I feed it extra brie, until I feel I have to stomp it to death, which I do. Later, the girl's femur and left jawbone lie in the oven, baking, and tufts of pubic hair fill a Steuben crystal ashtray, and when I light them, they burn very quickly. At another new restaurant. For a limited period of time, I'm capable of being halfway cheerful and outgoing, so I accept Evelyn's invitation to dinner during the first week of November at Luke, a new super chic Nouvelle Chinese restaurant that also serves, oddly enough, Creole cuisine. We have a good table, I reserved under Wintergreen's name, the simplest of triumphs, and I feel anchored, calm, even with Evelyn sitting across from me, prattling on about a very large Fabergé egg she thought she saw at the Pierre rolling around the lobby of its own accord or something like that. The office Halloween party was at the Royalton last week, and I went as a mass murderer, complete with a sign painted on my back that read Mass Murderer, which was decidedly lighter than the sandwich board I had constructed earlier that day that read Driller Killer. And beneath those 2 words I had written in blood, "Yep, that's me." And the suit was also covered with blood, some of it fake, most of it real. In one fist I clenched a hank of Victoria Bell's hair, and pinned next to my boutonniere, a small white rose, was a finger bone I'd boiled the flesh off of. As elaborate as my costume was, Craig McDermott still managed to win first place in the competition, He came as Ivan Boski, which I thought was unfair, since a lot of people thought I'd gone as Michael Milken last year. The Patty Winters show this morning was about home abortion kits. The first 5 minutes after being seated are fine. Then the drink I ordered touches the table, and I instinctively reach for it, but I find myself cringing every time Evelyn opens her mouth. I notice that Saul Steinberg is eating here tonight, but refuse to mention this to Evelyn. A toast? I suggest. Oh, to what? She murmurs uninterestedly, craning her neck, looking around the stark, dimly lit, very white room. Freedom? I ask tiredly. But she's not listening because some English guy wearing a 3-button wool houndstooth suit, a tattersall wool vest, a spread-collar cotton Oxford shirt, suede shoes, and a silk tie, all by Garrick Anderson, whom Evelyn pointed out once after we'd had a fight at O'Bar, and called gorgeous, and whom I had called a dwarf, walks over to our table, openly flirting with her, and it pisses me off to think that she feels I'm jealous about this guy. But I eventually get the last laugh when he asks if she still has the job at that art gallery on First Avenue, and Evelyn, clearly stressed, her face falling, answers no, corrects him, and after a few awkward words he moves on. She sniffs, opens her menu, immediately starts on about something else without looking at me. What are all these t-shirts I've been seeing, she asks. All over the city? Have you seen them? Silkience equals death? Are people having problems with their conditioners or something? Am I missing something? What were we talking about? No, that's absolutely wrong. It's science equals death. I sigh, close my eyes. Jesus, Evelyn. Only you could confuse that and a hair product. I have no idea what the hell I'm saying, but I nod, waving to someone at the bar. An older man, his face covered in shadow. Someone I only half know, actually, but he manages to raise his champagne glass my way and smile back, which is a relief. Who's that? I hear Evelyn asking. He's a friend of mine, I say. I don't recognize him, she says. P&P? Forget it, I sigh. Who is it, Patrick? She asks, more interested in my reluctance than in an actual name. Why? I ask back. Who is it? She asks. Tell me. A friend of mine, I say, teeth gritted. Who, Patrick? She asks, then squinting. Wasn't he at my Christmas party? No, he was not, I say, my hands drumming the tabletop. Isn't it Michael J. Fox? She asks, still squinting. The actor? Hardly, I say, then fed up. Oh, for Christ's sakes. His name is George Levanter, and no, he didn't star in The Secret of My Success. Oh, how interesting. Already Evelyn is back, poring over the menu. Now, what were we talking about? Trying to remember, I ask. Conditioners or some kind of conditioner, I sigh. I don't know. You were talking to the dwarf. Ian is not a midget, Patrick, she says. He is unusually short, Evelyn, I counter. Are you sure he wasn't at your Christmas party? And then my voice lowered. Serving hors d'oeuvres? You cannot keep referring to Ian as a dwarf, she says, smoothing her napkin over her lap. I will not stand for it, she whispers, not looking at me. I can't restrain myself from snickering. It isn't funny, Patrick, she says. You cut the conversation short, I point out. Did you expect me to be flattered? She spits out bitterly. Listen, baby, I'm just trying to make that encounter seem as legitimate as possible, so don't, screw it up for yourself. Just stop it, she says, ignoring me. Oh, look, it's Robert Farrell. After waving to him, she discreetly points him out to me, and sure enough, Bob Farrell, whom everyone likes, is sitting on the north side of the room at a window table, which secretly drives me mad. He's very good-looking, Evelyn confides admiringly, only because she's noticed me contemplating the 20-year-old hard body he's sitting with, and to make sure I've registered this, she teasingly chirps, Hope I'm not making you jealous? He's handsome, I admit. Stupid-looking, but handsome. Don't be nasty. He's very handsome, she says, and then suggests, Why don't you get your hair styled that way? Before this comment, I was an automaton, only vaguely paying attention to Evelyn, but now I'm panicked, and I ask, What's wrong with my hair? In a matter of seconds, my rage quadruples. What the hell is wrong with my hair? I touch it lightly. Nothing, she says, noticing how upset I've gotten. Just a suggestion, and then really noticing how flushed I've become. Your hair looks really, really great. She tries to smile, but only succeeds in looking worried. A sip, half a glass, of the J&B calms me enough to say, looking over at Farrell, Actually, I'm horrified by his paunch. Evelyn studies Farrell, too. Oh, he doesn't have a paunch. That's definitely a paunch, I say. Look at it. That's just the way he's sitting, she says, exasperated. Oh, It's a paunch, Evelyn, I stress. Oh, you're crazy, she waves me off. A lunatic. Evelyn, the man is barely 30. So what? Everyone's not into weightlifting like you, she says, annoyed, looking back at the menu. I do not weightlift, I sigh. Oh, go over and sock him in the nose, then, you big bully, she says, brushing me off. I really don't care. Don't tempt me, I warn her. Then looking back at Farrell, I mutter, what a creep. Oh my God, Patrick, you have no right to be so embittered, Evelyn says angrily, still staring into her menu. Your animosity is grounded on nothing. There must be something really the matter with you. Look at his suit, I point out, unable to help myself. Look at what he's wearing. Oh, so what, Patrick? She turns a page, finds it has nothing on it, and turns back to the page she was previously studying. Hasn't it occurred to him that his suit might inspire loathing? I ask. Patrick, you are being a lunatic, she says, shaking her head, now looking over the wine list. God damn it, Evelyn, what do you mean, being? I say. I fucking am one. Must you be so militant about it? She asks. I don't know. I shrug. Anyway, I was going to tell you what happened to Melania and Taylor, and... She notices something, and in the same sentence adds, sighing, Stop looking at my chest, Patrick. Look at me, not my chest. Now anyway, Taylor Grassgreen and Melania were... You know Melania, she went to Sweetbriar. Her father owns all those banks in Dallas, and Taylor went to Cornell. Anyway, they were supposed to meet at the Cornell Club, and then they had a reservation at Mondrian at 7, and he was wearing... She stops, retraces. No. Lassigna. They were going to Lassigna, and Taylor was... She stops again. Oh, God, it was Mondrian. Mondrian at 7, and he was wearing a Piero Dimitri suit. Melania had been shopping. I think she'd been to Bergdorf S, though I'm not positive. But anyway, oh yes. It was Bergdorf's because she was wearing the scarf at the office the other day, so anyway, she hadn't been to her aerobics class for something like 2 days, and they were mugged on one of... Waiter, I call to someone passing by. Another drink? J and B? I point to the glass, upset that I phrased it as a question rather than a command. Don't you want to find out what happened? Evelyn asks, displeased. With bated breath, I sigh, totally uninterested. I can hardly wait. Anyway, the most amusing thing happened, she starts. I am absorbing what you are saying to me, I'm thinking. I notice her lack of carnality, and for the first time it taunts me. Before, it was what attracted me to Evelyn. Now its absence upsets me, seems sinister, fills me with a nameless dread. At our last session, yesterday in fact, the psychiatrist I've been seeing for the past 2 months asked, What method of contraception do you and Evelyn use? And I sighed before answering, my eyes fixed out the window on a skyscraper, then at the painting above the Turchin glass coffee table, a giant visual reproduction of a graphic equalizer by another artist, not Annika. Her job. When he asked about her preferred sexual act, I told him completely serious, foreclosure. Dimly aware that if it weren't for the people in the restaurant, I would take the jade chopsticks sitting on the table and push them deep into Evelyn's eyes and snap them in two. I nod, pretending to listen, but I've already phased out and I don't do the chopsticks thing. Instead, I order a bottle of the Chassagne Montrachet. Isn't that amusing? Evelyn asks. Casually laughing along with her, the sounds coming out of my mouth loaded with scorn, I admit. Riotous. I say it suddenly, blankly. My gaze traces the line of women at the bar. Are there any I'd like to fuck? Probably. The long-legged hard-body sipping a cure on the last stool? Perhaps. Evelyn is agonizing between the mache raisin and gumbo salad, or the gratinized beet, hazelnut, baby greens, and endive salad, and I suddenly feel like I've been pumped full of Klonopin, which is an anti-convulsive, but it wasn't doing any good. Christ, $20 for a fucking egg roll? I mutter, studying the menu. It's a moushu custard lightly grilled, she says. It's a fucking egg roll, I protest, to which Evelyn replies, You're so cultivated, Patrick. No, I shrug, just reasonable. I'm desperate for some beluga, she says. Honey? No, I say. Why not? She asks, pouting. Because I don't want anything out of a can, or that's Iranian, I sigh. She sniffs haughtily and looks back at the menu. The moo fu jambalaya is really first-rate, I hear her say. The minutes tick by. We order. The meal arrives. Typically the plate is massive, white porcelain, 2 pieces of blackened yellowtail sashimi with ginger lie in the middle, surrounded by tiny dots of wasabi, which is circled by a minuscule amount of hijiki. And on top of the plate sits 1 lone baby prawn. Another one, even smaller, lies curled on the bottom, which confuses me since I thought this was primarily a Chinese restaurant. I stare at the plate for a long time, and when I ask for some water, our waiter reappears with a pepper shaker instead and insists on hanging around our table, constantly asking us at 5-minute intervals if we'd like some pepper perhaps, or more pepper. And once the fool moves over to another booth, whose occupants I can see out of the corner of my eye both cover their plates with their hands, I wave the maitre d' over and ask him, "Could you please tell the waiter with the pepper shaker to stop hovering over our table? We don't want pepper. We haven't ordered anything that needs pepper. No pepper. Tell him to get lost." "Of course," my apologizes. The maitre d' humbly bows. Embarrassed, Evelyn asks, "Must you be so overly polite?" I put down my fork and shut my eyes. "Why are you constantly undermining my stability?" She breathes in. "Let's just have a conversation, not an interrogation, okay?" "About what?" I snarl. "Listen," she says. "The young Republican bash at the Pull, eh?" She stops herself as if remembering something, then continues, "At the Trump Plaza is next Thursday." I want to tell her I can't make it, hoping to God she has other plans, even though 2 weeks ago, drunk and coked up at Mortimer's or O Bar, I invited her, for Christ's sakes. "Are we going?" After a pause. "I guess," I say glumly. "For dessert, I've arranged something special. At a power breakfast at the 21 Club this morning with Craig McDermott, Alex Baxter, and Charles Kennedy, I stole a urinal cake from the men's room when the attendant wasn't looking. At home, I covered it with a cheap chocolate syrup, froze it, then placed it in an empty Godiva box, tying a silk bow around it. And now in Luke, when I excuse myself to the restroom, I make my way instead to the kitchen after I've stopped at the coat check to retrieve the package, and I ask our waiter to present this to the table in the box and to tell the lady seated there that Mr. Bateman called up earlier to order this especially for her. I even tell him, while opening the box, to put a flower on it, whatever, hand him a 50. He brings it over once a suitable amount of time has elapsed, after our plates have been removed, and I'm impressed by what a big deal he makes over it. He's even placed a silver dome over the box, and Evelyn coos with delight when he lifts it off, saying, "Voira!" And she makes a move for the spoon he's laid next to her water glass, that I make sure is empty, and turning to me, Evelyn says, "Patrick, that's so sweet." And I nod to the waiter, smiling, and wave him away when he tries to place a spoon on my side of the table. "Aren't you having any?" Evelyn asks, concerned. She hovers over the chocolate-dipped urinal cake anxiously, poised. I adore Godiva. "I'm not hungry," I say. "Dinner was filling." She leans down, smelling the brown oval, and, catching a scent of something, probably disinfectant, asks me, now dismayed, "Are you sure?" "No, darling," I say. "I want you to eat it. There's not a lot there." She takes the first bite, chewing dutifully, immediately and obviously disgusted, then swallows. She shudders, then makes a grimace but tries to smile as she takes another tentative bite. "How is it?" I ask, then urging, "Eat it, it's not poisoned or anything." Her face, twisted with displeasure, manages to blanch again as if she were gagging. "What?" I ask, grinning. "What is it?" "It's so..." Her face is now one long, agonized grimace mask, and, shuddering, she coughs. "Minty." But she tries to smile appreciatively, which becomes an impossibility. She reaches for my glass of water and gulps it down, desperate to rid her mouth of the taste. Then, noticing how worried I look, she tries to smile, this time apologetically. "It's just..." She shudders again. "It's just so minty." To me, she looks like a big black ant in an original Christian LaCroix, eating a urinal cake, and I almost start laughing, but I also want to keep her at ease. I don't want her to get second thoughts about finishing the urinal cake. But she can't eat any more, and with only 2 bites taken, pretending to be full, she pushes the tainted plate away. And at this moment I start feeling strange. Even though I marveled at her eating that thing, it also makes me sad, and suddenly I'm reminded that no matter how satisfying it was to see Evelyn eating something I and countless others had pissed on, in the end the displeasure it caused her was at my expense. It's an anticlimax, a futile excuse to put up with her for 3 hours. My jaw begins to clench, relax, involuntarily. There is music playing somewhere, but I can't hear it. Evelyn asks the waiter hoarsely if perhaps he could get her some lifesavers from the Korean deli around the block. Then, very simply, dinner reaches its crisis point when Evelyn says, "I want a firm commitment." The evening has already deteriorated considerably, so this comment doesn't ruin anything or leave me unprepared, but the unreasonableness of our situation is choking me, and I push my water glass back toward Evelyn and ask the waiter to remove the half-eaten urinal cake. My endurance for tonight is shot the second the melting dessert is taken away. For the first time, I notice that she has been eyeing me for the last 2 years, not with adoration, but with something closer to greed. Someone finally brings her a water glass along with a bottle of Evian I didn't hear her order. I think, Evelyn, that I start again, that we've lost touch. Why? What's wrong? She's waving to a couple, Lawrence Montgomery and Gina Webster, I think. And from across the room, Gina holds up her hand, which has a bracelet on it. Evelyn nods approvingly. My need to engage in homicidal behavior on a massive scale cannot be, corrected, I tell her, measuring each word carefully. But I have no other way to express my blocked needs. I'm surprised at how emotional this admission makes me, and it wears me down. I feel lightheaded. As usual, Evelyn misses the essence of what I'm saying, and I wonder how long it will take to finally rid myself of her. We need to talk, I say quietly. She puts her empty water glass down and stares at me. Patrick, she begins, if you're going to start in again on why I should have breast implants, I'm leaving, she warns. I consider this, then it's over, Evelyn. It's all over. Touchy, she says, motioning to the waiter for more water. I'm serious, I say quietly. It is fucking over. Us. This is no joke. She looks back at me and I think that maybe someone is actually comprehending what I'm trying to get through to them, but then she says, let's just avoid the issue, all right? I'm sorry I said anything. Now, are we having coffee? Again, she waves the waiter over. I'll have a decaf espresso, Evelyn says. Patrick? Port, I sigh. Any kind of port. Would you like to see, the waiter begins. Just the most expensive port, I cut him off. And oh yeah, a dry beer. My, Evelyn murmurs after the waiter leaves. Are you still seeing your shrink? I ask. Patrick, she warns. Who? Sorry, I sigh. Your doctor. No. She opens her handbag, looking for something. Why not? I ask, concerned. I told you why, she says dismissively. But I don't remember, I say, mimicking her. At the end of a session, he asked me if I could get him +3 into Nels that night. She checks her mouth, the lips, in the mirror of the compact. Why do you ask? Because I think you need to see someone, I begin, hesitantly, honestly. I think you are emotionally unstable. You have a poster of Oliver North in your apartment and you're calling me unstable? She asks, searching for something else in the handbag. No, you are, Evelyn, I say. Exaggerating. You're exaggerating, she says, rifling through the bag, not looking at me. I sigh, but then begin gravely. I'm not going to push the issue, but... How uncharacteristic of you, Patrick, she says. Evelyn, this has got to end, I sigh, talking to my napkin. I'm 27. I don't want to be weighed down with a commitment. Honey? She asks. Don't call me that, I snap. What, honey? She asks. Yes, I snap again. What do you want me to call you? She asks indignantly. CEO? She stifles a giggle. Oh, Christ. No, really, Patrick. What do you want me to call you? King, I'm thinking. King, Evelyn. I want you to call me King, but I don't say this. Evelyn, I don't want you to call me anything. I don't think we should see each other anymore. But your friends are my friends. My friends are your friends. I don't think it would work, she says, and then staring at a spot above my mouth. You have a tiny fleck on the top of your lip. Use your napkin. Exasperated, I brush the fleck away. Listen, I know that your friends are my friends and vice versa. I've thought about that. After a pause, I say, breathing in, you can have them. Finally, she looks at me, confused, and murmurs, You're really serious, aren't you? Yes, I say. I am. But what about us? What about the past? She asks blankly. The past isn't real. It's just a dream, I say. Don't mention the past. She narrows her eyes with suspicion. Do you have something against me, Patrick? And then the hardness in her face changes instantaneously to expectation, maybe hope. Evelyn, I sigh. I'm sorry. You're just not terribly important to me. Without missing a beat, she demands, Well, who is? Who do you think is, Patrick? Who do you want? After an angry pause, she asks, Cher? Cher? I ask back, confused. Cher? What are you talking about? Oh, forget it. I want it over. I need sex on a regular basis. I need to be distracted. In a matter of seconds, she becomes frantic, barely able to contain the rising hysteria that's surging through her body. I'm not enjoying it as much as I thought I would. But what about the past, our past? She asks again, uselessly. Don't mention it, I tell her, leaning in. Why not? Because we never really shared one, I say, keeping my voice from rising. She calms herself down and, ignoring me, opening her handbag again, mutters, Pathological. Your behavior is pathological. What does that mean? I ask, offended. Abhorrent. You're pathological. She finds a Laura Ashley pillbox and unsnaps it. Pathological what? I ask, trying to smile. Forget it. She takes a pill that I don't recognize and uses my water to swallow it. I'm pathological? You're telling me that I'm pathological? I ask. We look at the world differently, Patrick. She sniffs. Thank God, I say viciously. You're inhuman, she says, trying, I think, not to cry. I stall, attempting to defend myself. In touch with humanity. No, she shakes her head. I know my behavior is erratic sometimes, I say, fumbling. Suddenly, desperately, she takes my hand from across the table, pulling it closer to her. What do you want me to do? What is it you want? Oh, Evelyn, I groan, pulling my hand away, shocked that I've finally gotten through to her. She's crying. What do you want me to do, Patrick? Tell me, please, she begs. You should... Oh, God, I don't know. Wear erotic underwear? I say, guessing. Oh, Jesus, Evelyn, I don't know. Nothing. You can't do anything. Please, what can I do? She sobs quietly. Smile less often, no more about cars, say my name with less regularity. Is this what you want to hear? I ask. It won't change anything. You don't even drink beer, I mutter. But you don't drink beer either. That doesn't matter. Besides, I just ordered one. So there. Oh, Patrick. If you really want to do something for me, you can stop making a scene right now, I say, looking uncomfortably around the room. Waiter, she asks, as soon as he sets down the decaf espresso, the port, and the dry beer. I'll have a what? She looks over at me tearfully, confused and panicked. A Corona? Is that what you drink, Patrick? A Corona? Oh my God, give it up. Please, just excuse her, I tell the waiter then, as soon as he walks away. Yes, a Corona, but we're in a fucking Chinese Cajun bistro, so... Oh God, Patrick, she sobs, blowing her nose into the handkerchief I've tossed at her. You're so lousy. You're inhuman. No, I stall again. You are not... She stops, wiping her face, unable to finish. I'm not what? I ask, waiting, interested. You are not... She sniffs, looks down, her shoulders heaving. All there! You... She chokes. Don't add up. I do too, I say indignantly, defending myself. I do too add up. You're a ghoul, she sobs. No, I say, confused, watching her. You're the ghoul. Oh God, she moans, causing the table next to ours to look over, then away. I can't believe this. I'm leaving now, I say soothingly. I've assessed the situation and I'm going. Don't, she says, trying to grab my hand. Don't go. I'm leaving, Evelyn. Where are you going? Suddenly she looks remarkably composed. She's been careful not to let the tears, which actually I've just noticed are very few, affect her makeup. Tell me, Patrick, where are you going? I've placed a cigar on the table. She's too upset to even comment. I'm just leaving, I say simply. But where? She asks, more tears welling up. Where are you going? Everyone in the restaurant within a particular oral distance seems to be looking the other way. Where are you going? She asks again. I make no comment, lost in my own private maze, thinking about other things. Warrants, stock offerings, ESOPs, LBOs, IPOs, finances, refinances, debentures, converts, proxy statements, 8Ks, 10Qs, zero coupons, PKs, GNPs, the IMF, hot executive gadgets, billionaires, Kenkichi Nakajima, infinity, how fast a luxury car should go, bailouts, junk bonds, whether to cancel my subscription to The Economist, the Christmas Eve when I was 14 and had raped one of our maids, inclusivity, envying someone's life, whether someone could survive a fractured skull, waiting in airports, stifling a scream, credit cards and someone's passport, and a book of matches from La Côte Basque splattered with blood, surface. A Rolls is a Rolls is a Rolls. To Evelyn, our relationship is yellow and blue, but to me it's a gray place, most of it blacked out, bombed. Footage from the film in my head is endless shots of stone, and any language heard is utterly foreign. The sound flickering away over new images, blood pouring from automated tellers, women giving birth through their assholes, embryos frozen or scrambled, which is it? Nuclear warheads, billions of dollars, the total destruction of the world, someone gets beaten up, someone else dies, sometimes bloodlessly, more often mostly by rifle shot, assassinations, comas, life played out as a sitcom, a blank canvas that reconfigures itself into a soap opera. It's an isolation ward that serves only to expose my own severely impaired capacity to feel. I am at its center, out of season, and no one ever asks me for any identification. I suddenly imagine Evelyn's skeleton, twisted and crumbling, and this fills me with glee. It takes a long time to answer her question, "Where are you going?" But after a sip of the port, then the dry beer rousing myself, I tell her, at the same time wondering, if I were an actual automaton, what difference would there really be? Libya. And then, after a significant pause, Pago Pago. I meant to say Pago Pago. And then I add, because of your outburst, I'm not paying for this meal. Tries to cook and eat, girl. Dawn. Sometime in November. Unable to sleep, writhing on my futon, still in a suit, my head feeling like someone has lit a bonfire on it. In it, a constant searing pain that keeps both eyes open, utterly helpless. There are no drugs, no food, no liquor that can appease the forcefulness of this greedy pain. All my muscles are stiff, all my nerves burning on fire. I'm taking Sominex by the hour since I've run out of Dalmane, but nothing really helps. And soon even the box of Sominex is empty. Things are lying in the corner of my bedroom. A pair of girls' shoes from Edward Susan Bennis Allen, a hand with the thumb and forefinger missing, the new issue of Vanity Fair splashed with someone's blood, a cummerbund drenched with gore, and from the kitchen wafting into the bedroom is the fresh smell of blood cooking. And when I stumble up out of bed into the living room, the walls are breathing, the stench of decay smothers everything. I light a cigar, hoping the smoke will mask at least some of it. Her breasts have been chopped off, and they look blue and deflated, the nipples a disconcerting shade of brown. Surrounded by dried black blood, they lie rather delicately. On a china plate I bought at the Pottery Barn on top of the Wurlitzer jukebox in the corner, though I don't remember doing this. I have also shaved all the skin and most of the muscle off her face so that it resembles a skull, with a long flowing mane of blonde hair falling from it, which is connected to a full, cold corpse. Its eyes are open, the actual eyeballs hanging out of their sockets by their stalks. Most of her chest is indistinguishable from her neck, which looks like ground-up meat. Her stomach resembles the eggplant and goat cheese lasagna at Il Mar Libro or some other kind of dog food, the dominant colors red and white and brown. A few of her intestines are smeared across one wall, and others are mashed up into balls that lie strewn across the glass-top coffee table like long blue snakes, mutant worms. The patches of skin left on her body are blue-gray, the color of tinfoil. Her vagina has discharged a brownish syrupy fluid that smells like a sick animal, as if that rat had been forced back up in there, had been digested or something. I spend the next 15 minutes beside myself, pulling out a bluish rope of intestine, most of it still connected to the body, and shoving it into my mouth, choking on it, and it feels moist in my mouth, and it's filled with some kind of paste which smells bad. After an hour of digging, I detach her spinal cord and decide to Federal Express the thing without cleaning it, wrapped in tissue, under a different name, to Leona Helmsley. I want to drink this girl's blood as if it were champagne, and I plunge my face deep into what's left of her stomach, scratching my chomping jaw on a broken rib. The huge new television set is on in one of the rooms, first blaring out the Patty Winters show, whose topic today is human dairies, then a game show, Wheel of Fortune, and the applause coming from the studio audience sounds like static each time a new letter is turned. I'm loosening the tie I'm still wearing with a blood-soaked hand, breathing in deeply. This is my reality. Everything outside of this is like some movie I once saw. In the kitchen, I try to make meatloaf out of the girl, but it becomes too frustrating a task. And instead, I spend the afternoon smearing her meat all over the walls, chewing on strips of skin I ripped from her body. Then I rest by watching a tape of last week's new CBS sitcom, Murphy Brown. After that, and a large glass of J&B, I'm back in the kitchen. The head in the microwave is now completely black and hairless, and I place it in a tin pot on the stove in an attempt to boil any remaining flesh I forgot to shave off. Heaving the rest of her body into a garbage bag, my muscles, slathered with Bengay, easily handling the dead weight, I decide to use whatever is left of her for a sausage of some kind. A Richard Marx CD plays on the stereo. A bag from Zabar's loaded with sourdough, onion bagels, and spices sits on the kitchen table while I grind bone and fat and flesh into patties. And though it does sporadically penetrate how unacceptable some of what I'm doing actually is, I just remind myself that this thing, this girl, this meat, is nothing, is shit. And along with a Xanax, which I am now taking half-hourly. This thought momentarily calms me, and then I'm humming the theme to a show I watched often as a child. The Jetsons, the Banana Splits, Scooby-Doo, Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. I'm remembering the song, the melody, even the key it was sung in, but not the show. Was it Lidsville? Was it H.R. Puffenstuff? These questions are punctuated by other questions as diverse as, will I ever do time? And did this girl have a trusting heart? The smell of meat and blood clouds up the condo until I don't notice it anymore. And later, my macabre joy sours, and I'm weeping for myself, unable to find solace in any of this, crying out, sobbing, I just want to be loved, cursing the earth and everything I have been taught. Principles, distinctions, choices, morals, compromises, knowledge, unity, prayer, all of it was wrong without any final purpose. All it came down to was die or adapt. I imagine my own vacant face, the disembodied voice coming from its mouth. These are terrible times. Maggots already writhe across the human sausage. The drool pouring from my lips dribbles over them, and still I can't tell if I'm cooking any of this correctly, because I'm crying too hard and I have never really cooked anything before. Taking an Uzi to the gym. On a moonless night, in the starkness of the locker room at Exclusive, after working out for 2 hours, I'm feeling good. The gun in my locker is an Uzi, which cost me $700, and though I am also carrying a Ruger Mini, $469, in my Bottega Veneta briefcase. And it's favored by most hunters. I still don't like the way it looks. There's something more manly about an Uzi, something dramatic about it that gets me excited. And sitting here, Walkman on my head in a pair of $200 black Lycra bicycle shorts, a Valium just beginning to take effect, I stare into the darkness of the locker, tempted. The rape and subsequent murder last night of an NYU student behind the Gristides on University Place near her dorm, however inappropriate the timing, no matter how uncharacteristic the lapse, was highly satisfying. And though I'm unprepared by my change of heart, I'm in a reflective mood, and I place the gun, which is a symbol of order to me, back in the locker, to be used at another time. I have videotapes to return, money to be taken out of an automated teller, a dinner reservation at 150 Worcester that was difficult to get. Chase, Manhattan. Tuesday night at Boulay, in no man's land, a fairly unremarkable marathon dinner, even after I tell the table, listen guys, my life is a living hell. They utterly ignore me. The group assembled, Richard Perry, Edward Lampert, John Constable, Craig McDermott, Jim Kramer, Lucas Tanner. Continuing to argue about allocating assets, which stocks look best for the upcoming decade. Hard bodies, real estate, gold, why long-term bonds are too risky now. The spread collar, portfolios, how to use power effectively, new ways to exercise. Stolichnaya Crystal, how best to impress very important people, eternal vigilance, life at its best. Here in Boulay, I cannot seem to control myself. Here in a room that contains a whole host of victims. Lately, I can't help noticing them everywhere. In business meetings, nightclubs, restaurants, in passing taxis and in elevators. Online at automated tellers and on porno tapes. In David's Cookies and on CNN, everywhere. All of them having one thing in common. They are prey. And during dinner I almost become unglued, plummeting into a state of near vertigo that forces me to excuse myself before dessert, at which point I use the restroom, do a line of cocaine, pick up my Giorgio Armani wool overcoat, and the .357 Magnum barely concealed within it from the coat check. Strap on a holster, and then I'm outside. But on the Patty Winters show this morning, there was an interview with a man who set his daughter on fire while she was giving birth. At dinner, we all had shark. In Tribeca, it's misty out, sky on the verge of rain, the restaurants down here empty. After midnight, the streets remote, unreal. The only sign of human life, someone playing a saxophone on the corner of Duane Street, in the doorway of what used to be Duplex, which is now an abandoned bistro that closed last month. A young guy, bearded, white beret, playing a very beautiful but cliched saxophone solo. At his feet, an open umbrella with $1, damp and some change in it. Unable to resist, I move up to him, listening to the music, something from Les Miserables. He acknowledges my presence, nods. And while he closes his eyes, lifting the instrument up, leaning his head back during what I guess he thinks is a passionate moment. In one fluid motion, I take the .357 Magnum out of its holster and, not wanting to arouse anyone in the vicinity, I screw a silencer onto the gun. A cold autumn wind rushes up the street, engulfing us, and when the victim opens his eyes, spotting the gun, he stops playing, the tip of the saxophone still in his mouth. I pause too, then nod for him to go on, and tentatively he does. Then I raise the gun to his face and in mid-note pull the trigger, but the silencer doesn't work, and in the same instant a huge crimson ring appears behind his head. The booming sound of the gunshot deafens me. Stunned, his eyes still alive, he falls to his knees, then onto his saxophone. I pop the clip and replace it with a full one. Then something bad happens. Because while doing this, I've failed to notice the squad car that was traveling behind me. Doing what, God only knows. Handing out parking tickets. And after the noise, the Magnum makes echoes, fades, the siren of the squad car pierces the night, out of nowhere, sending my heart into palpitations. I start walking away from the trembling body, slowly, casually at first, as if innocent. Then I break into a run, full-fledged, the cop car screeching after me. Over a loudspeaker, a cop shouts uselessly, "Halt, stop, halt, put down your weapon." Ignoring them, I make a left on Broadway, heading down toward City Hall Park. Ducking into an alleyway, the squad car follows, but only makes it halfway as the alley narrows. A spray of blue sparks flying up before it gets stuck, and I run out the end of the alley as fast as I can onto Church Street, where I flag down a cab, hop in the front seat, and scream at its driver. A young Iranian guy, completely taken by surprise, to "Get the hell out of here fast! No drive!" I'm waving the gun at him, in his face. But he panics, cries out in mangled English, "Don't shoot me, please don't kill me!" Holding his hands up, I mutter, "Oh shit!" and scream, "Drive!" But he's terrified. "Oh, don't shoot me, man, don't shoot!" I impatiently mutter, "Fuck yourself!" and raising the gun to his face. Pull the trigger. The bullet splatters his head open, cracks it in half like a dark red watermelon against the windshield, and I reach over him, open the door, push the corpse out, slam the door, start driving. In an adrenaline rush causing panting, I can only get a few blocks, partly because of panic, mostly because of the blood, brains, chunks of head covering the windshield, and I barely avoid a collision with another cab on Franklin. Is it? And Greenwich, veering the taxi sharply to the right, swerving into the side of a parked limousine. Then I shift into reverse, screech down the street, turn on the windshield wipers, realizing too late that the blood sprayed across the glass is on the inside. Attempt to wipe it away with a gloved hand, and racing blindly down Greenwich, I lose control entirely. The cab swerves into a Korean deli, next to a karaoke restaurant called Lotus Blossom. I've been to with Japanese clients, the cab rolling over fruit stands, smashing through a wall of glass, the body of a cashier thudding across the hood. Patrick tries to put the cab in reverse, but nothing happens. He staggers out of the cab. Leaning against it, a nerve-wracking silence follows. "Nice going, Bateman," he mutters, limping out of the store, the body on the hood moaning in agony. Patrick with no idea where the cop running toward him across the street has come from. He's yelling something into his walkie-talkie, thinking Patrick is stunned, but Patrick surprises him by lunging out before the cop can get to his gun, and he knocks him over onto the sidewalk. Where people from the Lotus Blossom are now standing, staring dumbly at the wreckage, no one helping the cop as the two men lie struggling on the sidewalk. The cop wheezing from exertion on top of Patrick, trying to wrestle the Magnum from his grasp, but Patrick feels infected, like gasoline is coursing through his veins instead of blood. It gets windier, the temperature drops, it starts raining, but softly they roll into the street. Patrick keeps thinking there should be music. He forces a demonic leer, his heart thumping, and manages quite easily to bring the gun up to the cop's face, two pairs of hands holding it. But Patrick's finger pulls the trigger, the bullet blowing a crease in the top of the officer's skull, yet failing to kill him, but lowering his aim with the aid of the loosening grip of the officer's fingers. Patrick shoots him in the face, the bullet's exit casting a lingering pinkish mist, while some of the people on the sidewalk scream, "Do nothing, hide, run back into the restaurant," as the cop car Patrick thought he evaded in the alley careens toward the deli, red lights flashing, screeching to a halt, right when Patrick trips over the curb, collapsing onto the sidewalk, at the same time reloading the Magnum, hiding behind the corner, the terror he thought had passed engulfing him again, thinking, I have no idea what I've done to increase my chances of getting caught. I shot a saxophonist? A saxophonist who was probably a mime too. For that I get this, and in the near distance he can hear other cars coming, lost in the maze of streets. The cops now, right here, don't bother with warnings anymore, they just start shooting. And he returns their gunfire from his belly, getting a glimpse of both cops behind the open doors of the squad car, guns flashing like in a movie. And this makes Patrick realize he's involved in an actual gunfight of sorts, that he's trying to dodge bullets, that the dream threatens to break, is gone, that he's not aiming carefully, just obliviously returning gunfire. Lying there, when a stray bullet, sixth in a new round, hits the gas tank of the police car. The headlights dim before it burst apart, sending a fireball billowing up into the darkness, the bulb of a street lamp above it exploding unexpectedly in a burst of yellow-green sparks, flames washing over the bodies of the policemen, both living and dead, shattering all the windows of Lotus Blossom, Patrick's ears ringing. While running toward Wall Street, still in Tribeca, he stays away from where the street lamps shine the brightest, notices that the entire block he's lurching down is gentrified. Then he dashes past a row of Porsches, tries to open each one, and sets a string of car alarm sirens off. The car he would like to steal is a black Range Rover with permanent four-wheel drive, an aircraft-grade aluminum body on a boxed steel chassis, and a fuel-injected V8 engine, but he can't find one. And though this disappoints him, he's also intoxicated by the whirlwind of confusion, by the city itself, the rain falling from an ice. Cold sky, but still warm enough in the city on the ground for fog to drift through the passageways the skyscrapers create in Battery Park, in Wall Street, wherever, most of them a kaleidoscopic blur. And now he's jumping over an embankment, somersaulting over it. Then he's running like crazy, running full tilt, his brain locked into the physical exertion of utter, sheer panic, helter-skelter. Now he thinks a car is following him down a deserted highway. Now he feels the night accepts him. From somewhere else, a shot is heard, but doesn't really register because Patrick's mind is out of sync, forgetting his destination, until like a mirage, his office building, where Pierce & Pierce is located, comes into view, the lights in it going off, floor by floor, as if a darkness is rising through it, running another 100 yards, 200 yards, ducking into the stairs below where. His senses blocked for the first time with fear and bewilderment, and dumbstruck with confusion, he rushes into the lobby of what he thinks is his building, but no, something seems wrong. What is it? You moved? The move itself was a nightmare, even though Patrick has a better office now. The new Barney's and Godiva stores adjacent to the lobby ease the strain. And he's gotten the buildings mixed up, it's only at the elevator. Doors, both of which are locked, where he notices the huge Julian Schnabel in the lobby, and he realizes wrong fucking building, and he whirls around, making a mad scramble for the revolving doors. But the night watchman who tried to get Patrick's attention before now waves him in, as he's about to bolt out of the lobby. Burning the midnight oil, Mr. Smith, you forgot to sign in. And frustrated, Patrick shoots at him while spinning once, twice through the glass doors which thrust him back into the lobby of God only knows where as the bullet catches the watchman in the throat, knocking him backward, leaving a spray of blood hanging momentarily in midair before drizzling down on the watchman's contorted, twisted face. And the black janitor Patrick has just noticed has been watching the scene from a corner of the lobby. Mop in hand, bucket by his feet, drops the mop, raises his hands, and Patrick shoots him right between the eyes. A stream of blood covers his face, the back of his head explodes in a spray. Behind him, the bullet knocks out a chunk of marble. The force of the blast slams him against the wall, Patrick dashing across the street toward the light of his new office. When he walks in, nodding toward Gus, our night watchman, signing in, heading up in the elevator, higher, toward the darkness of his floor, calm is eventually restored. Safe in the anonymity of my new office, able with shaking hands to pick up the cordless phone, looking through my Rolodex, exhausted, eyes falling upon Harold Carnes's number. Dialing the 7 digits slowly, breathing deeply, evenly, I decide to make public what has been, until now, my private dementia. But Harold isn't in. Business, London. I leave a message, admitting everything, leaving nothing out. 30, 40, 100 murders, and while I'm on the phone with Harold's machine, a helicopter with a searchlight appears, flying low over the river. Lightning cracks the sky open in jagged bolts behind it, heading toward the building I was last at, descending to land on the building's roof across from this one. the bottom of the building surrounded already by police cars. 2 ambulances and a SWAT team leaps out of the helicopter. A half-dozen armed men disappear into the entrance on the deck of the roof. Flares are lined up what seems like everywhere, and I'm watching all of this with the phone in my hand, crouched by my desk, sobbing, though I don't know why, into Harold's machine. I left her in a parking lot, near a Dunkin' Donuts, somewhere around Midtown. And finally, after 10 minutes of this, I sign off by concluding, I'm a pretty sick guy, then hang up. But I call back, and after an interminable beep, proving my message was indeed recorded, I leave another. Listen, it's Bateman again, and if you get back tomorrow, I may show up at Da Umberto's tonight, so, keep your eyes open. And the sun, a planet on fire, gradually rises over Manhattan, another sunrise, and soon the night turns into day so fast it's like some kind of optical illusion. Huey Lewis and the News. Huey Lewis and the News burst out of San Francisco onto the national music scene at the beginning of the decade, with their self-titled rock-pop album released by Chrysalis, though they really didn't come into their own commercially or artistically until their 1983 smash, Sports. Though their roots were visible, blues, Memphis soul, country, on Huey Lewis and the News, they seemed a little too willing to cash in on the late 70s, early 80s taste for new wave, and the album, though it's still a smashing debut, seems a little too stark, too punk. Examples of this being the drumming on the first single, Some of My Lies Are True Sooner or Later, and the fake hand claps on Don't Make Me Do It, as well as the organ on Taking a Walk. Even though it was a little bit strained, their peppy boy wants girl lyrics and the energy with which Lewis, as a lead singer, instilled all the songs were refreshing. Having a great lead guitarist like Chris Hayes, who also shares vocals, doesn't hurt either. Hayes' solos are as original and unrehearsed as any in rock. Yet the keyboardist, Sean Hopper, seemed too intent on playing the organ a little too mechanically, though his piano playing on the second half of the album gets better. And Bill Gibson's drumming was too muted to have much impact. The songwriting also didn't mature until much later, though many of the catchy songs had hints of longing and regret and dread. Stop Trying is just one example. Though the boys hail from San Francisco and they share some similarities with their Southern California counterparts, the Beach Boys, gorgeous harmonies, sophisticated vocalizing, beautiful melodies, they even posed with a surfboard on the cover of the debut album. They also carried with them some of the bleakness and nihilism of the, thankfully now forgotten, punk rock scene of Los Angeles at the time. Talk about your angry young man. Listen to Huey on Who Cares, Stop Trying, Don't Even Tell Me That You Love Me, Trouble in Paradise. The titles say it all. Huey hits his notes like an embittered survivor. And the band often sounds as angry as performers like The Clash or Billy Joel or Blondie. No one should forget that we have Elvis Costello to thank for discovering Huey in the first place. Huey played harmonica on Costello's second record, the thin, vapid My Aim Was You. Lewis has some of Costello's supposed bitterness, though Huey has a more bitter, cynical sense of humor. Elvis might think that intellectual wordplay is as important as having a good time and having one's cynicism tempered by good spirits. But I wonder what he thinks about Lewis selling so many more records than he. Things looked up for Huey and the boys on the second album, 1982's Picture This, which yielded 2 semi-hits, Workin' for a Living and Do You Believe in Love? And the fact that this coincided with the advent of video, there was one made for both songs, undoubtedly helped sales. The sound, though still tinged with new wave trappings, seemed more roots rock than the previous album, which might have something to do with the fact that Bob Clearmountain mixed the record, or that Huey Lewis and the News took over the producing reins. Their songwriting grew more sophisticated, and the group wasn't afraid to quietly explore other genres, notably reggae, Tell Her a Little Lie, and ballads, Hope You Love Me Like You Say and Is It Me? But for all its power pop glory, the sound and the band seem, gratefully, less rebellious, less angry on this record, though the blue-collar bitterness of Workin' for a Livin' seems like an outtake from the earlier album. They seem more concerned with personal relationships. 4 of the album's 10 songs have the word love in their title, rather than strutting around as young nihilists, and the mellow good times feel of the record is a surprising, infectious change. The band is playing better than it last did, and the Tower of Power horns give the record a more open, warmer sound. The album hits its peak with the back-to-back 1-2 punch of Workin' for a Livin' and Do You Believe in Love, which is the best song on the album, and is essentially about the singer asking a girl he's met while looking for someone to meet if she believes in love. The fact that the song never resolves the question, we never find out what the girl says, gives it an added complexity that wasn't apparent on the group's debut. Also on Do You Believe in Love is a terrific sax solo by Johnny Colla. The guy gives Clarence Clemens a run for his money. Who, like Chris Hayes on lead guitar and Sean Hopper on keyboards, has by now become an invaluable asset to the band. The sax solo on the ballad Is It Me is even stronger. Huey's voice sounds more searching, less raspy, yet plaintive, especially on The Only One, which is a touching song about what happens to our mentors and where they end up. Bill Gibson's drumming is especially vital to this track. Though the album should have ended on that powerful note, it ends instead with Buzz, 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 a throwaway blues number that doesn't make much sense compared to what preceded it. But in its own jokey way, it amuses, and the Tower of Power horns are in excellent form. There are no such mistakes made on the band's third album and flawless masterpiece, Sports, Chrysalis. Every song has the potential to be a huge hit, and most of them were. It made the band rock and roll icons. Gone totally is the bad boy image, and a new frat guy sweetness takes over. They even have the chance to say ass in one song and choose to bleep it instead. The whole album has a clear, crisp sound and a new sheen of consummate professionalism that gives the songs on the album a big boost. And the wacky original videos made to sell the record. Heart and Soul, The Heart of Rock and Roll, If This Is It, Bad is Bad, I Want a New Drug, made them superstars on MTV. Produced by the band, Sports opens with what will probably become their signature song, The Heart of Rock and Roll, a loving ode to rock and roll all over the United States. It's followed by Heart and Soul, their first big single, which is a trademark Lewis song, though it's written by outsiders Michael Chapman and Nicky Chinn, and the tune that firmly and forever established them as the premier rock band in the country for the 1980s. If the lyrics aren't quite up to par with other songs, most of them are more than serviceable, and the whole thing is a jaunty enterprise about what a mistake one-night stands are, a message the earlier, rowdier Huey would never have made. Bad is Bad, written solely by Lewis, is the bluesiest song the band had recorded up to this point, and Mario Cipollina's bass playing gets to shine on it, but it's really Huey's harmonica solos that give it an edge. I Want a New Drug, with its killer guitar riff, courtesy of Chris Hayes, is the album's centerpiece. Not only is it the greatest anti-drug song ever written, it's also a personal statement about how the band has grown up, shucked off their bad boy image and learned to become more adult. Hayes' solo on it is incredible, and the drum machine used, but not credited, gives not only I Want a New Drug, but most of the album a more consistent backbeat than any of the previous albums, even though Bill Gibson is still a welcome presence. The rest of the album whizzes by flawlessly. Side 2 opens with their most searing statement yet, Walking on a Thin Line, and no one, not even Bruce Springsteen, has written as devastatingly about the plight of the Vietnam vet in modern society. This song, though written by outsiders, shows a social awareness that was new to the band and proved to anyone who ever doubted it that the band, apart from its blues background, had a heart. And again in Finally Found a Home, the band proclaims its newfound sophistication with this paean to growing up. And though at the same time it's about shedding their rebel image, it's also about how they found themselves in the passion and energy of rock and roll. In fact, the song works on so many levels it's almost too complex for the album to carry, though it never loses its beat, and it still has Sean Hopper's ringing keyboards, which make it danceable. If This Is It is the album's one ballad, but it's not downbeat. It's a plea for a lover to tell another lover if they want to carry on with the relationship, and the way Huey sings it, arguably the most superb vocal on the album, it becomes instilled with hope. Again, this song, as with the rest of the album, isn't about chasing or longing after girls, it's about dealing with relationships. Crack Me Up is the album's only hint at a throwback to the band's new wave days, and it's minor but amusing, though its anti-drinking, anti-drug, pro-growing-up statement isn't. And as a lovely ending to an altogether remarkable album, the band does a version of Honky Tonk Blues, another song written by someone not in the band named Hank Williams. And even though it's a very different type of song, you can feel its presence throughout the rest of the album. For all its professional sheen, the album has the integrity of honky-tonk blues. Aside, during this period, Huey also recorded 2 songs for the movie Back to the Future, which both went #1, The Power of Love and Back in Time, delightful extras, not footnotes, in what has been shaping up into a legendary career. What to say to sports dissenters in the long run? 9 million people can't be wrong. 4. Chrysalis, 1986, is essentially a continuation of the sports album, but with an even more professional sheen. This is the record where the guys don't need to prove they've grown up, and that they've accepted rock and roll, because in the 3-year transition between sports and 4, they already had. In fact, 3 of them are wearing suits on the cover of the record. It opens with a blaze of fire, Jacob's Ladder, which is essentially a song about struggle and overcoming compromise, a fitting reminder of what Huey and the News represents, and with the exception of Hip to Be Square, it's the best song on the album, though it wasn't written by anyone in the band. This is followed by the sweetly good-natured Stuck With You, a lightweight paean to relationships and marriage. In fact, most of the love songs on the album are about sustained relationships, unlike the early albums, where the concerns were about either lusting after girls and not getting them or getting burned in the process. On 4, the songs are about guys who are in control, who have the girls, and now have to deal with them. This new dimension in the News gives the record an added oomph, and they seem more content and satisfied, less urgent, and this makes for their most pleasingly crafted record to date. But also for every Doing It All for My Baby, a delightful ode about monogamy and satisfaction. There's a barn-burning blues scorcher number like Whole Lotta Lovin', and side 1, or on the CD, song number 5, ends with the masterpiece Hip to Be Square, which, ironically, is accompanied by the band's only bad video, the key song on 4, which is a rollicking ode to conformity that's so catchy most people probably don't even listen to the lines. But with Chris Hayes blasting guitar and the terrific keyboard playing, who cares? And it's not just about the pleasures of conformity and the importance of trends. It's also a personal statement about the band itself, though of what I'm not quite sure. If the second part of 4 doesn't have the intensity of the first, there are some real gems that are actually quite complicated. I Know What I Like is a song that Huey would never have sung 6 years back, a blunt declaration of independence, while the carefully placed I Never Walk Alone, which follows, actually complements the song and explains it in broader terms. It also has a great organ solo, and except for Hip to Be Square, has Huey's strongest vocals. Forest for the Trees is an upbeat anti-suicide tract, and though its title might seem like a cliché, Huey and the band have a way of energizing clichés and making them originals wholly their own. The nifty a cappella naturally evokes an innocent time while showcasing the band's vocal harmonies. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was the Beach Boys coming out of your CD player. And even if it's essentially a throwaway, a trifle of sorts, the album ends on a majestic note with Simple as That, a blue-collar ballad that sounds not a note of resignation, but one of hope, and its complex message, it wasn't written by anyone in the band, of survival, leads the way to their next album, Small World, where they take on global issues. 4 might not be the masterpiece sports is, what could be, but in its own way, it's just as satisfying, and the mellower, gentler Huey of 86 is just as happening. Small World, Chrysalis, 1988, is the most ambitious, artistically satisfying record yet produced by Huey Lewis and the News. The angry young man has definitely been replaced by a smoothly professional musician, and even though Huey has only really mastered one instrument, the harmonica, its majestic Dylan-esque sounds give Small World a grandeur few artists have reached. It's an obvious transition, and their first album that tries to make thematic sense. In fact, Huey takes on one of the biggest subjects of all, the importance of global communication. It's no wonder 4 out of the album's 10 songs have the word world in their titles, and that for the first time there's not only 1 but 3 instrumentals. The CD gets off to a rousing start with the Lewis/Hayes-penned Small World, Part 1, which, along with its message of harmony, has a blistering solo by Hayes at its center. In old Antones, one can catch the Zydeco influences that the band has picked up on touring around the country, and it gives it a Cajun flavor that is utterly unique. Bruce Hornsby plays the accordion wonderfully, and the lyrics give you a sense of a true Bayou spirit. Again, on the hit single Perfect World, the Tower of Power horns are used to extraordinary effect. It's also the best cut on the album, written by Alex Call, who isn't in the band. and it ties up all the album's themes, about accepting the imperfections of this world but still learning to keep on dreaming of living in a perfect world. Though the song is fast-paced pop, it's still moving in terms of its intentions, and the band plays splendidly on it. Oddly, this is followed by two instrumentals, the eerie African-influenced reggae dance track Bobo Tempo, and the second part of Small World. But just because these tunes are wordless doesn't mean the global message of communication is lost, and they don't seem like filler or padding because of the implications of their thematic reprise. The band gets to show off its improvisational skills as well. Side 2 opens smashingly with Walking with the Kid, the first Huey song to acknowledge the responsibilities of fatherhood. His voice sounds mature, and even though we, as listeners, don't find out until the last line that the kid, who we assume is a buddy, is actually his son, the maturity in Huey's voice tips us off, and it's hard to believe that the man who once sang Heart and Soul and Some of My Lies Are True is singing this. The album's big ballad, World to Me, is a dreamy pearl of a song, and though it's about sticking together in a relationship, it also makes allusions to China and Alaska and Tennessee, carrying on the album's Small World theme. And the band sounds really good on it. Better Be True is also a bit of a ballad, but it's not a dreamy pearl, and its lyrics aren't really about sticking together in a relationship, nor does it make allusions to China or Alaska. And the band sounds really good on it. Give Me the Keys and I'll Drive You Crazy is a good times blues rocker about, what else? Driving around, incorporating the album's theme in a much more playful way than previous songs on the album did, and though lyrically it might seem impoverished, it's still a sign that the new, serious Lewis, that Huey the artist, hasn't totally lost his frisky sense of humor. The album ends with Slammin', which has no words, and it's just a lot of horns that, quite frankly, if you turn it up really loud, can give you a fucking big headache and maybe even make you feel a little sick. Though it might sound different on an album or on a cassette, though I wouldn't know anything about that. Anyway, it set off something wicked in me that lasted for days, and you cannot dance to it very well. It took something like 100 people to put Small World together, counting all the extra musicians, drum technicians, accountants, lawyers, who are all thanked. But this actually adds to the CD's theme of community, and it doesn't clutter the record. It makes it a more joyous experience. With this CD and the 4 previous ones behind it, Huey Lewis and the News prove that if this really is a small world, then these guys are the best American band of the 1980s on this or any other continent, and it has with it Huey Lewis, a vocalist, musician, and writer who just can't be topped. In bed with Courtney. I'm in Courtney's bed. Luis is in Atlanta. Courtney shivers, presses against me, relaxes. I roll off her onto my back, landing on something hard and covered with fur. I reach under myself to find a stuffed black cat with blue jewels, for eyes that I think I spotted at FAO Schwartz when I was doing some early Christmas shopping. I'm at a loss as to what to say, so I stammer, "Tiffany lamps are making a comeback." I can barely see her face in the darkness, but hear the sigh, painful and low, the sound of a prescription bottle snapping open, her body shifting in the bed. I drop the cat on the floor, get up, take a shower. On the Patty Winters show this morning, the topic was beautiful teenage lesbians, which I found so erotic I had to stay home, miss a meeting, jerk off twice. Aimless, I spent an inordinate amount of the day at Sotheby's, bored and confused. Last night, dinner with Jeanette at deck chairs, she seemed tired and ordered little. We split a pizza that cost $90. After toweling my hair dry, I put on a Ralph Lauren robe and walk back into the bedroom, start to dress. Courtney is smoking a cigarette, watching Late Night with David Letterman, the sound turned down low. "Will you call me before Thanksgiving?" she asks. "Maybe." I button up the front of my shirt, wondering why I even came here in the first place. "What are you doing?" she asks, speaking slowly. My response is predictably cool. "Dinner at the River Cafe. Afterwards, au bar, maybe?" "That's nice," she murmurs. "You and Luis?" I ask. "We were supposed to have dinner at Tad and Mora's," she sighs, "but I don't think we're going to anymore." "Why not?" I slip on my vest, black cashmere from Polo, thinking, I am really interested. "Oh, you know how Luis is about the Japanese?" she starts, her eyes already glazed over. When she fails to continue, I ask, annoyed, "You're making sense, go on." "Luis refused to play Trivial Pursuit at Tad and Mora's last Sunday because they have an Akita." She takes a drag off her cigarette. "So, like," I pause. What happened? We played at my place. I never knew you smoked, I say. She smiles sadly, but in a dumb way. You never noticed. Okay, I admit I'm embarrassed, but just a little. I move over to the Marleyan mirror that hangs above a sot-sass teakwood desk to make sure the knot in my Armani paisley tie isn't crooked. Listen, Patrick, she says with effort, can we talk? You look marvelous. I sigh, turning my head, offering an air kiss. There's nothing to say. You're going to marry Luis. Next week, no less. Isn't that special? She asks, sarcastically, but not in a frustrated way. Read my lips, I say, turning back to the mirror. You look marvelous. Patrick? Yes, Courtney? If I don't see you before Thanksgiving. She stops, confused. Have a nice one? I look at her for a moment before replying, tonelessly. You too. She picks up the stuffed black cat, strokes its head. I step out the door into the hallway, heading down it toward the kitchen. Patrick, she calls softly from her bedroom. I stop, but don't turn around. Yes? Nothing. Smith and Wollensky. I'm with Craig McDermott in Harry's on Hanover. He's smoking a cigar, drinking a Stoli Cristal martini, asking me what the rules are for wearing a pocket square. I'm drinking the same thing, answering him. We're waiting for Harold Carnes, who just got back from London on Tuesday, and he's half an hour late. I'm nervous, impatient, and when I tell McDermott that we should have invited Todd, or at least Hamlin, who was sure to have cocaine, he shrugs and says that maybe we'll be able to find Carnes at Delmonico's. But we don't find Carnes at Delmonico's, so we head uptown to Smith and Wollensky for an 8 o'clock reservation that one of us made. McDermott is wearing a 6-button double-breasted wool suit by Cerruti 1881, a Tattersall cotton shirt by Louis Boston, a silk tie by Dunhill. I'm wearing a 6-button double-breasted wool suit by Ermenegildo Zegna, a striped cotton shirt by Luciano Barbera, a silk tie by Armani suede wingtips by Ralph Lauren, socks by E.G. Smith. Men who have been raped by women was the topic on the Patty Winters show this morning. Sitting in a booth at Smith and Wollensky, which is strangely empty, I'm on Valium, drinking a good glass of red wine, wondering absently about that cousin of mine at St. Albans in Washington, who recently raped a girl, biting her earlobes off, getting a sick thrill not ordering the hash browns. How my brother and I once rode horses together, played tennis. This is burning from my memory, but McDermott eclipses these thoughts when he notices I haven't ordered the hash browns after dinner has arrived. What is this? You can't eat at Smith and Wollensky without ordering the hash browns, he complains. I avoid his eyes and touch the cigar I'm saving in my jacket pocket. Jesus, Bateman, you're a raving maniac. Been at P&P too long, he mutters. No fucking hash browns? I don't say anything. How can I tell McDermott that this is a very disjointed time of my life and that I notice the walls have been painted a bright, almost painful white, and under the glare of the fluorescent lights they seem to pulse and glow? Frank Sinatra is somewhere singing Witchcraft. I'm staring at the walls, listening to the words, suddenly thirsty. But our waiter is taking orders from a very large table of exclusively Japanese businessmen and someone who I think is either George McGowan or Taylor Preston, in the booth behind this one, wearing something by Polo, is eyeing me suspiciously, and McDermott is still staring at my steak with this stunned look on his face, and one of the Japanese businessmen is holding an abacus. Another one is trying to pronounce the word teriyaki. Another is mouthing, then singing, the words to the song, and the table laughs, an odd, not completely foreign sound, as he lifts up a pair of chopsticks, shaking his head confidently, imitating Sinatra. His mouth opens. What comes out of it is, "That sir I come hittle stale, that clazy witchclaft." Something on television. While getting dressed to meet Jeanette for a new British musical that opened on Broadway last week, and then dinner at Progress, the new Malcolm Forbes restaurant on the Upper East Side, I watch a tape of this morning's Patty Winters show, which is split into 2 parts. The first section is a feature on the lead singer of the rock band Guns N' Roses, Axl Rose, whom Patty quoted as telling an interviewer, "When I get stressed, I get violent and take it out on myself. I've pulled razor blades on myself, but then realized that having a scar is more detrimental than not having a stereo. I'd rather kick my stereo in than go punch somebody in the face. When I get mad or upset or emotional, sometimes I'll walk over and play my piano. Part 2 consists of Patty reading letters that Ted Bundy, the mass murderer, had written to his fiancée during one of his many trials. "Dear Carol," she reads, while an unfairly bloated headshot of Bundy, just weeks away from execution, flashes across the screen. "Please do not sit in the same row in court with Janet. When I look over toward you there, she sits contemplating me with her mad eyes, like a deranged seagull studying a clam. I can feel her spreading hot sauce on me already." I wait for something to happen. I sit in my bedroom for close to an hour. Nothing does. I get up, do the rest of the coke, a minuscule amount, that's in my closet left over from a late Saturday at MK or O Bar, stop at Orso for a drink, before meeting Jeanette, who I called earlier, mentioning that I had 2 tickets to this particular musical, and she didn't say anything except, "I'll go." And I told her to meet me in front of the theater at 10 to 8, and she hung up. I tell myself while I'm sitting alone at the bar in Orso that I was going to call one of the numbers that flashed on the bottom of the screen. But then I realized that I didn't know what to say, and I remember 10 of the words Patty read. I can feel her spreading hot sauce on me already. I remember these words again for some reason while Jeanette and I are sitting in Progress after the musical and it's late, the restaurant is crowded. We order something called Eagle Carpaccio, mesquite grilled mahi-mahi, endive with chèvre and chocolate-covered almonds, this weird kind of gazpacho with raw chicken in it, dry beer. Right now there really is nothing edible on my plate. What there is tastes like plaster. Jeanette is wearing a wool smoking jacket, a silk chiffon shawl with one sleeve, wool tuxedo pants, all Armani, antique gold and diamond earrings, stockings from Givenchy, grosgrain flats. She keeps sighing and threatens to light a cigarette, even though we're seated in the non-smoking section of the restaurant. Jeanette's behavior deeply unsettles me, causes black thoughts to form and expand in my head. She's been drinking champagne curs, but has already had too many, and when she orders her 6th, I suggest that maybe she's had enough. She looks at me and says, "I am cold and thirsty, and I will order what I fucking want." I say, "Then have an Evian or San Pellegrino for Christ's sakes." Sandstone. My mother and I are sitting in her private room at Sandstone, where she is now a permanent resident. Heavily sedated, she has her sunglasses on and keeps touching her hair, and I keep looking at my hands, pretty sure that they're shaking. She tries to smile when she asks what I want for Christmas. I'm not surprised at how much effort it takes to raise my head and look at her. I'm wearing a 2-button wool gabardine suit with notched lapels by Gianmarco Venturi, cap-toed leather lace-ups by Armani, tie by Polo, socks I'm not sure where from. It's nearing the middle of April. "Nothing," I say, smiling reassuringly. There's a pause. I break it by asking, "What do you want?" She says nothing for a long time, and I look back at my hands, at dried blood, probably from a girl named Suki, beneath the thumbnail. My mother licks her lips tiredly and says, "I don't know, I just want to have a nice Christmas." I don't say anything. I've spent the last hour studying my hair in the mirror I've insisted the hospital keep in my mother's room. "You look unhappy," she says suddenly. "I'm not," I tell her with a brief sigh. "You look unhappy," she says, more quietly this time. She touches her hair, stark blinding white again. "Well, you do too," I say slowly, hoping that she won't say anything else. She doesn't say anything else. I'm sitting in a chair by the window, and through the bars the lawn outside darkens. A cloud passes over the sun. Soon the lawn turns green again. She sits on her bed in a nightgown from Bergdorf's and slippers by Norma Kamali that I bought her for Christmas last year. "How was the party?" she asks. "Okay," I say, guessing. "How many people were there?" 500. I shrug. I'm not sure. She licks her lips again, touches her hair once more. "What time did you leave?" "I don't remember," I answer after a long time. 1? 2? She asks. "It must have been 1, I say, almost cutting her off. "Oh." She pauses again, straightens her sunglasses. Black Ray-Bans I bought her from Bloomingdale's that cost $200. "It wasn't very good," I say, uselessly looking at her. "Why?" she asks, curious. "It just wasn't," I say, looking back at my hand. The the specks of blood under the nail on my thumb, the photograph of my father when he was a much younger man, on my mother's bedside table, next to a photograph of Sean and me when we were both teenagers wearing tuxedos, neither one of us smiling. In the photograph of my father, he's wearing a 6-button double-breasted black sport coat, a white spread-collar cotton shirt, a tie, pocket square, shoes, all by Brooks Brothers. He's standing next to one of the topiary animals a long time ago at his father's estate in Connecticut, and there's something the matter with his eyes. The best city for business. And on a rainy Tuesday morning, after working out at Occlusive, I stopped by Paul Owen's apartment on the Upper East Side. 161 days have passed since I spent the night in it with the 2 escort girls. There has been no word of bodies discovered in any of the city's 4 newspapers or on the local news. No hints of even a rumor floating around. I've gone so far as to ask people, dates, business acquaintances, over dinners, in the halls of Pierce & Pierce, if anyone has heard about 2 mutilated prostitutes found in Paul Owen's apartment. But like in some movie, no one has heard anything, has any idea of what I'm talking about. There are other things to worry over. The shocking amount of laxative and speed that the cocaine in Manhattan is now being cut with. Asia in the 1990s. The virtual impossibility of landing an 8 o'clock reservation at PR. The new Tony McManus restaurant on Liberty Island. Crack. So what I'm assuming is that essentially, no bodies have been found. For all I know, Kimball has moved to London, too. The building looks different to me as I step out of the taxi, though I can't figure out why. I still have the keys I stole from Owen the night I killed him. And I take them out now to open the lobby door, but they don't work, won't fit properly. Instead, a uniformed doorman who wasn't here 6 months ago opens it for me, excusing himself for taking so long. I stand there in the rain, confused, until he ushers me in, merrily asking, with a thick Irish accent, "Well, are you coming in or staying out? You're getting soaked." I move into the lobby, my umbrella held under one arm, tucking the surgical mask I brought with me to deal with the smell back into my pocket. I'm holding a Walkman, debating what to say, how to phrase it. "Well, now, what can I do for you, sir?" he asks. I stall, a long, awkward pause before saying simply, 14A. He looks me over carefully before checking his book, then beams, marking something down. "Ah, of course. Mrs. Wolfe is up there right now." "Mrs. Wolfe?" Weakly I smile. "Yes, she's the real estate agent," he says, looking up at me. "You do have an appointment, don't you?" The elevator operator, also a new addition, stares at the floor as the 2 of us rise up into the building. I'm trying to retrace my steps on that night, during that whole week, uselessly knowing I've never been back to this apartment after murdering the 2 girls. How much is Owen's apartment worth? Is a question that keeps forcing its way into my mind until finally it just rests there, throbbing. The Patty Winters show this morning was about people with half their brains removed. My chest feels like ice. The elevator doors open. I step out cautiously, watching behind me as they close. Then I'm moving down the hallway toward Owen's apartment. I can hear voices inside. I lean against the wall, sighing, keys in my hand, knowing already the locks have been changed. As I wonder what I should do, trembling, staring at my loafers, which are black and by A. Testoni, the door to the apartment opens, startling me out of a momentary flash of self-pity. A middle-aged real estate broker walks out, offers a smile, asks, checking her book, "Are you my 11 o'clock?" "No," I say. She says, "Excuse me," and making her way down the hall, looks back at me once, with a strange expression on her face before disappearing around the corner. I'm staring into the apartment. A couple in their late 20s stand conferring with each other in the middle of the living room. She's wearing a wool jacket, a silk blouse, wool flannel slacks, Armani, vermeil earrings, gloves, holding a bottle of Evian water. He has on a tweed sport jacket, cashmere sweater vest, cotton chambray shirt, tie, Paul Stewart, Agnes B. Cotton trench coat draped over arm. Behind them, the apartment looks spotless. New Venetian blinds, the cowhide paneling is gone. However, the furniture, the mural, the glass coffee table, Thonette chairs, black leather couch all seem intact. The large screen television set has been moved into the living room, and it's been turned on, the volume low. A commercial where a stain walks off a jacket and addresses the camera is on now, but it doesn't make me forget what I did to Christie's breasts. to one of the girl's heads, the nose missing, both ears bitten off, how you could see her teeth through where I had ripped the flesh from her jaws and both cheeks, the torrents of gore and the blood that washed over the apartment, the stench of the dead, my own confused warning that I had drawn in. "Can I help you?" The real estate agent, Mrs. Wolfe, I'm guessing, intrudes. She has a very angular, thin face, the nose is large, distressingly real-looking, heavily lipsticked mouth, white blue eyes. She's wearing a wool boucle jacket, washed silk blouse, shoes, earrings, a bracelet. From where? I don't know. Maybe she's younger than 40. I'm still leaning against the wall, staring at the couple who move back into the bedroom, leaving the main room empty. I'm just noticing that bouquets and glass vases, dozens of them, fill the apartment everywhere, and I can smell them from where I'm standing in the hall. Mrs. Wolfe glances behind her to see what I'm staring at, then back to me. "I'm looking for... Doesn't Paul Owen live here?" A long pause before she answers. "No, he doesn't." Another long pause. "Are you sure?" I ask before feebly adding, "I don't understand." She realizes something that causes the muscles in her face to tighten. Her eyes narrow but don't close. She's noticed the surgical mask I'm gripping in a damp fist, and she breathes in sharply, refusing to look away. I am definitely not feeling right about any of this. On the TV, in a commercial, a man holds up a piece of toast and tells his wife, "Hey, you're right. This margarine really does taste better than shit." The wife smiles. "You saw the ad in the Times?" she asks. "No, yes, I did." "In the Times," I falter, gathering a pocket of strength. The smell from the roses thick, masking something revolting. "But doesn't Paul Owen still own this?" I ask, as forcibly as possible. There's a long pause before she admits, "There was no ad in the Times." We stare at each other endlessly. I'm convinced she senses I'm about to say something. I've seen this look on someone's face before. Was it in a club? A victim's expression? Had it appeared on a movie screen recently? Or had I seen it in the mirror? It takes what seems like an hour before I can speak again. "But that's... his..." I stop, my heart skips, resumes beating. "Furniture." I drop my umbrella, then lean down quickly to retrieve it. "I think you should go," she says. I want to know what happened." I feel sick, my chest and back covered with sweat, drenched, it seems, instantaneously. "Don't make any trouble," she says. All frontiers, if there had ever been any, seem suddenly detachable and have been removed. A feeling that others are creating my fate will not leave me for the rest of the day. This is not a game. I want to shout, but I can't catch my breath, though I don't think she can tell. I turn my face away. I need rest. I don't know what to say. Confused, I reach out for a moment to touch Mrs. Wolfe's arm, to steady myself, but I stop it in midair, move it to my chest instead, but I can't feel it, not even when I loosen my tie. It rests there, trembling, and I can't make it stop. I'm blushing, speechless. "I suggest you go," she says. We stand there in the hallway facing each other. "Don't make any trouble," she says again, quietly. I stand there a few seconds longer before finally backing away, holding up my hands, a gesture of assurance. "Don't come back," she says. "I won't," I say. "Don't worry." The couple appears in the doorway. Mrs. Wolfe watches me until I'm at the elevator door, pressing the button for the attendant. In the elevator, the smell of the roses is overpowering. Working out. Free weights and Nautilus equipment relieve stress. My body responds to the workout accordingly. Shirtless, I scrutinize my image in the mirror above the sinks in the locker room at Exclusive. My arm muscles burn, my stomach is as taut as possible, my chest steel, pectorals granite hard, my eyes white as ice. In my locker in the locker room at Exclusive lie 3 vaginas I recently sliced out of various women I've attacked in the past week. 2 are washed off, 1 isn't. There's a barrette clipped to one of them, a blue ribbon from Hermes tied around my favorite. End of the 1980s. The smell of blood works its way into my dreams, which are, for the most part, terrible. On an ocean liner that catches fire, witnessing volcanic eruptions in Hawaii, the violent deaths of most of the inside traders at Salomon, James Robinson doing something bad to me, finding myself back at boarding school, then at Harvard, The dead walk among the living. The dreams are an endless reel of car wrecks and disaster footage, electric chairs and grisly suicides, syringes and mutilated pin-up girls, flying saucers, marble jacuzzis, pink peppercorns. When I wake up in a cold sweat, I have to turn on the widescreen television to block out the construction sounds that continue throughout the day, rising up from somewhere. A month ago was the anniversary of Elvis Presley's death. Football games flash by, the sound turned off. I can hear the answering machine click once, its volume lowered, then twice. All summer long, Madonna cries out to us, "Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone." When I'm moving down Broadway to meet Jean, my secretary, for brunch, in front of Tower Records, a college student with a clipboard asks me to name the saddest song I know. I tell him, without pausing, "You Can't Always Get What You Want" by the Beatles. Then he asks me to name the happiest song I know, and I say "Brilliant Disguise" by Bruce Springsteen. He nods, makes a note, and I move on, past Lincoln Center. An accident has happened. An ambulance is parked at the curb. A pile of intestines lies on the sidewalk in a pool of blood. I buy a very hard apple at a Korean deli, which I eat on my way to meet Jean, who right now stands at the 67th Street entrance to Central Park on a cool, sunny day in September. When we look up at the clouds, she sees an island, a puppy dog, Alaska, a tulip. I see but don't tell her a Gucci money clip, an axe, a woman cut in two, a large, puffy white puddle of blood that spreads across the sky, dripping over the city, onto Manhattan. We stop at an outdoor cafe, nowheres, on the Upper West Side, debating which movie to see, if there are any museum exhibits we should attend. Maybe just a walk, she suggests the zoo. I'm nodding mindlessly. Jean is looking good, like she's been working out, and she's wearing a gilt lame jacket and velvet shorts by Matsuda. I'm imagining myself on television in a commercial for a new product. Wine cooler, tanning lotion, sugarless gum, and I'm moving in jump cut, walking along a beach. The film is black and white, purposefully scratched, eerie, vague pop music from the mid-1960s accompanies the footage. It echoes, sounds as if it's coming from a calliope. Now I'm looking into the camera. Now I'm holding up the product. A new mousse, tennis shoes. Now my hair is windblown, then it's day, then night, then day again, and then it's night. "I'll have an iced decaf au lait," Jean tells the waiter. "I'll have a decapitated coffee also," I say absently before catching myself. I mean, decaffeinated. I glance over at Jean, worried, but she just smiles emptily at me. A Sunday Times sits on the table between us. We discuss plans for dinner tonight, maybe. Someone who looks like Taylor Preston walks by, waves at me. I lower my Ray-Bans, wave back. Someone on a bike pedals past. I ask a busboy for water. A waiter arrives instead, and after that a dish containing 2 scoops of sorbet, cilantro lemon, and vodka lime are brought to the table that I didn't hear Jean order. "Want a bite?" she asks. "I'm on a diet," I say, "but thank you." "You don't need to lose any weight," she says, genuinely surprised. "You're kidding, right? You look great, very fit." "You can always be thinner, look better," I mumble, staring at the traffic in the street, distracted by something. "What?" "I don't know. Look, better." "Well, maybe we shouldn't go out to dinner," she says, concerned. "I don't want to ruin your willpower." "No, it's all right," I say. "I'm not very good at controlling it anyway." "Patrick, seriously, I'll do whatever you want," she says. "If you don't want to go to dinner, we won't. I mean..." "It's okay," I stress. Something snaps. "You shouldn't fawn over him." I pause before correcting myself. "I mean, me. Okay?" "I just want to know what you want to do," she says. "To live happily ever after, right?" I say sarcastically. "That's what I want." I stare at her hard for maybe half a minute before turning away. This quiets her. After a while, she orders a beer. It's hot out on the street. "Come on, smile," she urges sometime later. "You have no reason to be so sad." "I know," I sigh, relenting, "but it's tough to smile these days. At least I find it hard to. I'm not used to it, I guess. I don't know." "That's why people need each other," she says, gently trying to make eye contact while spooning the not inexpensive sorbet into her mouth. "Some don't." I clear my throat self-consciously. "Or, well, people compensate. They adjust." After a long pause. "People can get accustomed to anything, right?" I ask. "Habit does things to people." Another long pause. Confused, she says, "I don't know, I guess. But one still has to maintain A ratio of more good things than bad in this world, she says, adding, I mean, right? She looks puzzled, as if she finds it strange that this sentence has come out of her mouth. A blast of music from a passing cab, Madonna again. Life is a mystery, everyone must stand alone. Startled by the laughter at the table next to ours, I cock my head and hear someone admit, sometimes what you wear to the office makes all the difference. And then Jean says something and I ask her to repeat it. Haven't you ever wanted to make someone happy? She asks. What? I ask, trying to pay attention to her. Jean? Shyly, she repeats herself. Haven't you ever wanted to make someone happy? I stare at her. A cold, distant wave of fright washes over me, dousing something. I clear my throat again, and trying to speak with great purposefulness, tell her, I was at Sugar Reef the other night, in that Caribbean place on the Lower East Side. You know it? Who were you with? She interrupts. Jeanette. Evan McGlynn. Oh. She nods, silently relieved, believing me. Anyway, I sigh, continuing, I saw some guy in the men's room, a total Wall Street guy, wearing a one-button viscose woolen nylon suit by Luciano Soprani, a cotton shirt by Gitman Brothers, a silk tie by Ermenegildo Zegna, and, I recognize the guy, a broker named Eldridge. I've seen him at Harry's and Bar and Duplex and Alex Goes to Camp, all the places, but when I went in after him, I saw he was writing something on the wall above the urinal he was standing at. I pause, take a swallow of her beer. When he saw me come in, he stopped writing, put away the Mont Blanc pen, he zipped up his pants, said hello, Henderson, to me, checked his hair in the mirror, coughed, like he was nervous or something, and left the room. I pause again, another swallow. Anyway, I went over to use the urinal, and I leaned over to read what he wrote. Shuddering, I slowly wipe my forehead with a napkin. Which was? Jean asks cautiously. I close my eyes, 3 words fall from my mouth, these lips. Kill all yuppies. She doesn't say anything. To break the uncomfortable silence that follows, I mention all I can come up with, which is, did you know that Ted Bundy's first dog, a collie, was named Lassie? Pause. Had you heard this? Jean looks at her dish as if it's confusing her, then back up at me. Who's Ted Bundy? Forget it, I sighed. Listen, Patrick, we need to talk about something, she says. Or at least I need to talk about something. Where there was nature and earth, life and water, I saw a desert landscape that was unending, resembling some sort of crater, so devoid of reason and light and spirit that the mind could not grasp it on any sort of conscious level. And if you came close, the mind would reel backward, unable to take it in. It was a vision so clear and real and vital to me that in its purity it was almost abstract. This was what I could understand, this was how I lived my life, what I constructed my movement around, how I dealt with the tangible. This was the geography around which my reality revolved. It did not occur to me, ever, that people were good, or that a man was capable of change, or that the world could be a better place through one's taking pleasure in a feeling or a look or a gesture, of receiving another person's love or kindness. Nothing was affirmative. The term generosity of spirit applied to nothing was a cliché, was some kind of bad joke. Sex is mathematics. Individuality no longer an issue. What does intelligence signify? Define reason. Desire meaningless. Intellect is not a cure. Justice is dead. Fear, recrimination, innocence, sympathy, guilt, waste, failure, grief were things, emotions that no one really felt anymore. Reflection is useless. The world is senseless. Evil is its only permanence. God is not alive. Love cannot be trusted. Surface, surface, surface was all that anyone found meaning in. This was civilization as I saw it, colossal and jagged. And I don't remember who it was you were talking to. It doesn't matter. What does is that you were very forceful, yet very sweet, and I guess I knew then that... She places her spoon down, but I'm not watching her. I'm looking out at the taxis moving up Broadway, yet they can't stop things from unraveling, because Jean says the following. A lot of people seem to have... She stops, continues hesitantly. Lost touch with life, and I don't want to be among them. After the waiter clears her dish, she adds, I don't want to get bruised. I think I'm nodding. I've learned what it's like to be alone, and I think I'm in love with you. She says this last part quickly, forcing it out. Almost superstitiously, I turn toward her, sipping an Evian water, then, without thinking, say, smiling, I love someone else. As if this film had speeded up, she laughs immediately, looks quickly away, down, embarrassed. Well, sorry. Gosh. But, I add quietly, you shouldn't be afraid. She looks back up at me, swollen with hope. Something can be done about it, I say. Then, not knowing why I'd said that, I modify the statement, telling her straight on, maybe something can't. I don't know. I've thrown away a lot of time to be with you, so it's not like I don't care. She nods mutely. You should never mistake affection for passion, I warn her. It can be not good. It can get you into, well, trouble. She's not saying anything, and I can suddenly sense her sadness, flat and calm like a daydream. What are you trying to say? She asks lamely, blushing. Nothing. I'm just letting you know that appearances can be deceiving. She stares at the Times stacked in heavy folds on the table. A breeze barely causes it to flutter. Why? Are you telling me this? Tactfully, almost touching her hand but stopping myself, I tell her, I just want to avoid any future misconnections. A hard body walks by. I notice her, then look back at Jean. Oh, come on, don't look that way. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not, she says, trying to act casual. I just want to know if you're disappointed in me for admitting this. How could she ever understand that there isn't any way I could be disappointed since I no longer find anything worth looking forward to? You don't know much about me, do you? I ask teasingly. I know enough, she says, her initial response, but then she shakes her head. Oh, let's just drop this. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. In the next instant, she changes her mind. I want to know more, she says gravely. I consider this before asking. Are you sure? Patrick, she says breathlessly, I know my life would be much emptier without you. In it. I consider this too, nodding thoughtfully. And I just can't... She stops, frustrated. I can't pretend these feelings don't exist, can I? Shh. There's an idea of a Patrick Bateman, some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me. Only an entity, something illusory, and though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there. It is hard for me to make sense on any given level. Myself is fabricated, an aberration. I am a non-contingent human being. My personality is sketchy and unformed. My heartlessness goes deep and is persistent. My conscience, my pity, my hopes disappeared a long time ago, probably at Harvard, if they ever did exist. There are no more barriers to cross. All I have in common with the uncontrollable and the insane, the vicious and the evil, all the mayhem I have caused and my utter indifference toward it, I have now surpassed. I still, though, hold on to one single bleak truth. No one is safe, nothing is redeemed, yet I am blameless. Each model of human behavior must be assumed to have some validity. Is evil something you are, or is it something you do? My pain is constant and sharp, and I do not hope for a better world for anyone. In fact, I want my pain to be inflicted on others. I want no one to escape. But even after admitting this, and I have countless times in just about every act I've committed, and coming face to face with these truths, there is no catharsis. I gain no deeper knowledge about myself. No new understanding can be extracted from my telling. There has been no reason for me to tell you any of this. This confession has meant nothing. I'm asking Jean, how many people in this world are like me? She pauses, carefully answers, I don't think anyone? She's guessing. Let me rephrase the quest. Wait, how does my hair look? I ask, interrupting myself. Fine. Okay, let me rephrase the question. I take a sip of her dry beer. Okay, why do you like me? I ask. She asks back, why? Yes, I say, why? Well, a drop of beer has fallen onto my polo shirt. She hands me her napkin, a practical gesture that touches me. You're concerned with others, she says tentatively. That's a very rare thing in what... She stops again. Is a hedonistic world. This is... Patrick, you're embarrassing me. She shakes her head, closing her eyes. Go on, I urge. Please, I want to know. You're sweet. She rolls her eyes up. Sweetness is sexy. I don't know, but so is mystery. Silence. And I think mystery, you're mysterious. Silence, followed by a sigh. And you're considerate. She realizes something, no longer scared, stares at me straight on. And I think shy men are romantic. How many people in this world are like me? I ask again. Do I really appear like that? Patrick, she says, I wouldn't lie. No, of course you wouldn't, but I think that... My turn to sigh, contemplatively. I think... You know how they say no two snowflakes are ever alike? She nods. Well, I don't think that's true. I think a lot of snowflakes are alike. And I think a lot of people are alike, too. She nods again, though I can tell she's very confused. Appearances can be deceiving, I admit carefully. No, she says, shaking her head, sure of herself for the first time. I don't think they are deceiving. They're not. Sometimes, Jean, I explain, the lines separating appearance, what you see, and reality, what you don't, become, well, blurred. That's not true, she insists. That's simply not true. Really? I ask, smiling. I didn't used to think so, she says. Maybe 10 years ago I didn't, but I do now. What do you mean? I ask, interested. You used to? A flood of reality. I get an odd feeling that this is a crucial moment in my life, and I'm startled by the suddenness of what I guess passes for an epiphany. There is nothing of value I can offer her. For the first time I see Jean as uninhibited. She seems stronger, less controllable, wanting to take me into a new and unfamiliar land, the dreaded uncertainty of a totally different world. I sense she wants to rearrange my life in a significant way. Her eyes tell me this, and though I see truth in them, I also know that one day, sometime very soon, she too will be locked in the rhythm of my insanity. All I have to do is keep silent about this and not bring it up, yet she weakens me. It's almost as if she's making the decision about who I am, and in my own stubborn, willful way I can admit to feeling a pang, something tightening inside. And before I can stop it, I find myself almost dazzled and moved that I might have the capacity to accept, though not return, her love. I wonder if even now, right here in Nowheres, she can see the darkening clouds behind my eyes lifting. And though the coldness I have always felt leaves me, the numbness doesn't and probably never will. This relationship will probably lead to nothing. This didn't change anything. I imagine her smelling clean, like tea. Patrick, talk to me. Don't be so upset, she is saying. I think it's time for me to take a good look at the world I've created. I choke tearfully, finding myself admitting to her. I came upon a half-gram of cocaine in my armoire last night. I'm squeezing my hands together, forming one large fist, all knuckles white. What did you do with it? She asks. I place one hand on the table. She takes it. I threw it away. I threw it all away. I wanted to do it, I gasp, but I threw it away. She squeezes my hand tightly. Patrick? She asks, moving her hand up until it's gripping my elbow. When I find the strength to look back at her, it strikes me how useless, boring, physically beautiful she really is, and the question, why not end up with her, floats into my line of vision. An answer. She has a better body than most other girls I know. Another one. Everyone is interchangeable anyway. One more. It doesn't really matter. She sits before me, sullen but hopeful, characterless, about to dissolve into tears. I squeeze her hand back, moved, no, touched by her ignorance of evil. She has one more test to pass. Do you own a briefcase? I ask her, swallowing. No, she says. I don't. Evelyn carries a briefcase, I mention. She does? Jean asked. And what about a filofax? A small one, she admits. Designer? I ask suspiciously. No. I sigh, then take her hand, small and hard, in mine. And in the southern deserts of Sudan, the heat rises in airless waves. Thousands upon thousands of men, women, children roam throughout the vast bushland, desperately seeking food. Ravaged and starving, leaving a trail of dead, emaciated bodies, they eat weeds and leaves and lily pads, stumbling from village to village, dying slowly, inexorably. A gray morning in the miserable desert. Grit flies through the air. A child with a face like a black moon lies in the sand, scratching at his throat, cones of dust rising, flying across land like whirling tops. No one can see the sun. The child is covered with sand, almost dead, eyes unblinking, grateful. Stop and imagine for an instant a world where someone is grateful for something. None of the haggard pay attention as they file by. Dazed and in pain, no. There is one who pays attention, who notices the boy's agony and smiles as if holding a secret. The boy opens and closes his cracked, chapped mouth soundlessly. There's a school bus in the distance somewhere and somewhere else. Above that, in space, a spirit rises. A door opens. It asks why. A home for the dead, an infinity. It hangs in a void. Time limps by. Love and sadness rush through the boy. Okay. I am dimly aware of a phone ringing somewhere. In the cafe on Columbus, countless numbers, hundreds of people, maybe thousands, have walked by our table during my silence. Patrick, Jean says. Someone with a baby stroller stops at the corner and purchases a Dove bar. The baby stares at Jean and me. We stare back. It's really weird, and I'm experiencing a spontaneous kind of internal sensation. I feel I'm moving toward, as well as away from something, and anything is possible. Aspen. It is 4 days before Christmas, at 2 p.m. I'm sitting in the back of a pitch-black limousine parked in front of a nondescript brownstone off Fifth Avenue, trying to read an article about Donald Trump in the new issue of Fame magazine. Jeanette wants me to come in with her, but I say, forget it. She has a black eye from last night, since I had to coerce her over dinner at Il Mar Libro to even consider doing this. Then, after a more forceful discussion at my apartment, she consented. Jeanette's dilemma lies outside my definition of guilt, and I had told her, truthfully, over dinner, that it was very hard for me to express concern for her that I don't feel. During the entire drive from my place on the Upper West Side, she's been sobbing. The only clear, identifiable emotion coming from her is desperation and maybe longing, and though I successfully ignore her for most of the ride, I finally have to tell her, listen, I've already taken 2 Xanax this morning, so, you're incapable of, upsetting me. Now, as she stumbles out of the limo onto the frozen pavement, I mumble, it's for the best. And offering consolation, don't take it so seriously. The driver, whose name I've forgotten, leads her into the brownstone, and she gives a last regretful look back. I sigh and wave her off. She's still wearing from last night a leopard print cotton balmacon coat with wool chalice lining over a wool crepe shirtless dress by Bill Blass. Bigfoot was interviewed on the Patty Winters show this morning, and to my shock I found him surprisingly articulate and charming. The glass I'm drinking Absolute vodka from is Finnish. I'm very suntanned compared to Jeanette. The driver comes out of the building, gives me thumbs up, carefully pulls the limousine away from the curb, and begins the trek to JFK Airport, where my flight to Aspen leaves in 90 minutes. When I get back in January, Jeanette will be out of the country. I relight a cigar, search for an ashtray. There's a church on the corner of this street. Who cares? This is, I think, the 5th child I've had aborted, the 3rd I haven't aborted myself. A useless statistic, I admit. The wind outside the limousine is brisk and cold, and the rain hits the darkened windows in rhythmic waves, mimicking Jeanette's probable weeping in the operating room, dizzy from the anesthesia, thinking about a memory from her past, a moment where the world was perfect. I resist the impulse to start cackling hysterically. At the airport, I instruct the chauffeur to stop by FAO Schwartz before picking Jeanette up and purchase the following: a doll, a rattle, a teething ring, a white gun polar bear, and have them sitting in the back seat for her, unwrapped. Jeanette should be okay. She has her whole life in front of her, that is, if she doesn't run into me. Besides, this girl's favorite movie is Pretty in Pink, and she thinks Sting is cool, so what is happening to her is not totally undeserved, and one shouldn't feel bad for her. This is no time for the innocent. Valentine's Day. Tuesday morning, and I'm standing by my desk in the living room on the phone with my lawyer, alternately keeping my eye on the Patty Winters show and the maid as she waxes the floor, wipes blood smears off the walls, throws away gore-soaked newspapers without a word. Faintly it hits me that she too is lost in a world of shit, completely drowning in it. And this somehow sets off my remembering that the piano tuner will be stopping by this afternoon and that I should leave a note with the doorman to let him in. Not that the Yamaha has ever been played, it's just that one of the girls fell against it and some strings, which I used later, were pulled out, snapped or something. Into the phone I'm saying, I need more tax breaks. Patty Winters is on the TV screen asking a child 8 or 9, but isn't that just another term for an orgy? The timer buzzes on the microwave. I'm heating up a souffle. There's no use in denying it. This has been a bad week. I've started drinking my own urine. I laugh spontaneously at nothing. Sometimes I sleep under my futon. I'm flossing my teeth constantly until my gums are aching and my mouth tastes like blood. Before dinner last night at 1500 with Reed Goodrich and Jason Rust, I was almost caught at a Federal Express in Times Square trying to send the mother of one of the girls I killed last week what might be a dried-up brown heart. And to Evelyn, I successfully Federal Expressed, through the office, a small box of flies along with a note, typed by Jean, saying that I never ever wanted to see her face again and, though she doesn't really need one, to go on a fucking diet. But there are also things that the average person would think are nice that I've done to celebrate the holiday. Items I've bought Jean and had delivered to her apartment this morning. Castellini cotton napkins from Bendel's, a wicker chair from Jenny B. Good, a taffeta table throw from Barney's, a vintage chainmail vent purse, and a vintage sterling silver dresser set from Macy's, a white pine whatnot from Conran's, an Edwardian 9-carat gold gate bracelet from Bergdorf's, and hundreds upon hundreds of pink and white roses. The office. Lyrics to Madonna songs keep intruding, bursting into my head, announcing themselves in tiring, familiar ways. And I stare into space, my eyes lazily lit up while I try to forget about the day looming before me. But then a phrase that fills me with a nameless dread keeps interrupting the Madonna songs. Isolated farmhouse constantly returns to me over and over. Someone I've been avoiding for the last year, a nerd from Fortune who wants to write an article about me, calls again this morning and I end up calling the reporter back to arrange an interview. Craig McDermott is having some kind of fax frenzy and won't take any of my phone calls, preferring to communicate by fax only. The Post this morning says the remains of 3 bodies that disappeared aboard a yacht last March have been recovered, frozen in ice, hacked up and bloated in the East River. Some maniac is going around the city poisoning 1-liter bottles of Evian water, 17 dead already. Talk of zombies, the public mood, increasing randomness, vast chasms of misunderstanding. And for the sake of form, Tim Price resurfaces, or at least I'm pretty sure he does. While I'm at my desk, simultaneously crossing out the days in my calendar that have already passed and reading a new bestseller about office management called Why It Works to Be a Jerk, Jean buzzes in, announcing that Tim Price wants to talk. And fearfully I say, send him in. Price strolls into the office wearing a wool suit by Canale Milano, a cotton shirt by Ike Behar, a silk tie by Bill Blass, cap-toed leather lace-ups from Brooks Brothers. I'm pretending to be on the phone. He sits down, across from me, on the other side of the Palazzetti glass-top desk. There's a smudge on his forehead, or at least that's what I think I see. Aside from that, he looks remarkably fit. Our conversation probably resembles something like this, but is actually briefer. Price, I say, shaking his hand, where have you been? Oh, just making the rounds, he smiles. But hey, I'm back. Far out, I shrug, confused. How was it? It was surprising. He shrugs too. It was depressing. I thought I saw you in Aspen, I murmur. Hey, how are you, Bateman? He asks. I'm okay, I tell him, swallowing, just existing. And Evelyn, he asks. How is she? Well, we broke up, I smile. That's too bad. He takes this in, remembers something. Courtney? She married Luis. Grass Green? No, Carruthers. He takes this in too. Do you have her number? While writing it down for him, I mention, You've been gone like forever, Tim. What's the story? I ask, again noticing the smudge on his forehead, though I get the feeling that if I asked someone else if it was truly there, he or she would just say no. He stands up, takes the card. I've been back. You just probably missed me, lost track because of the move. He pauses teasingly. I'm working for Robinson. Right-hand man, you know. Almond? I ask, offering one, a futile effort on my part to mask my dismay at his smugness. He pats my back, says, You're a madman, Bateman, an animal, a total animal. I can't disagree. I laugh weakly, walking him to the door. As he leaves, I'm wondering and not wondering what happens in the world of Tim Price, which is really the world of most of us. Big ideas, guy stuff, boy meets the world, boy gets it. Bum on 5th. I'm coming back from Central Park where, near the Children's Zoo, close to the spot I murdered the McCaffrey boy, I fed portions of Ursula's brain to passing dogs. Walking down 5th Avenue around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone on the street looks sad, The air is full of decay. Bodies lie on the cold pavement. Miles of it, some are moving, most are not. History is sinking, and only a very few seem dimly aware that things are getting bad. Airplanes fly low across the city, crossing in front of the sun. Winds shoot up 5th, then funnel down 57th Street. Flocks of pigeons rise in slow motion and burst up against the sky. The smell of burning chestnuts mixes with carbon monoxide fumes. I notice the skyline has changed only recently. I look up, admiringly at Trump Tower, tall, proudly gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. In front of it, 2 smart-ass nigger teenagers are ripping off tourists at 3-Card Monte, and I have to fight the impulse to blow them away. A bum I blinded one spring sits cross-legged on a ratty blanket near the corner of 55th Street. Moving closer, I see the beggar's scarred face, and then the sign he's holding beneath it, which reads, "Vietnam vet blinded in Vietnam. Please help me, we are hungry and homeless." We? Then I notice the dog, who's already eyeing me suspiciously, and as I approach its master, gets up growling, and when I'm standing over the bum, it finally barks, wagging its tail frantically. I kneel down, threateningly raise a hand at it. The dog backs off, its paws askew. I've pulled out my wallet, pretending to drop $1 into his empty coffee can, but then realize, why bother pretending? No one's watching anyway, definitely not him. I retract the $1, leaning in. He senses my presence and stops shaking the can. The sunglasses he wears don't even begin to cover the wounds I inflicted. His nose is so junked up I can't imagine a person breathing through it. "You never were in Vietnam," I whisper in his ear. After a silence, during which he pisses in his pants, the dog whimpering, he croaks, "Please don't hurt me." "Why would I waste my time?" I mutter, disgusted. I move away from the bum, noticing instead a little girl smoking a cigarette, begging for change outside Trump Tower. "Shoo," I say. She says shoo back. On the Patty Winters show this morning, a Cheerio sat in a very small chair and was interviewed for close to an hour. Later this afternoon, a woman wearing a silver fox and mink coat has her face slashed in front of the Stanhope by an enraged fur activist. But now, still staring at the sightless bum from across the street, I buy a Dove bar, a coconut one, in which I find part of a bone. New club. Thursday night, I run into Harold Carnes at a party for a new club called World's End that opens in a space where Petty's used to be on the Upper East Side. I'm with Nina Goodrich and Jean in a booth, and Harold's standing at the bar drinking champagne. I'm drunk enough to finally confront him about the message I left on his machine. Excused from the booth, I make my way to the other side of the bar, realizing that I need a martini to fortify myself before discussing this with Carnes. It has been a very unstable week for me. I found myself sobbing during an episode of Alf on Monday. Nervously, I approach. Harold is wearing a wool suit by Jeeves and Hawkes, a silk twill tie, cotton shirt, shoes by Paul Stewart. He looks heavier than I remember. "Face it," he's telling Truman Drake. "The Japanese will own most of this country by the end of the 90s. Relieved that Harold is, as usual, still dispensing valuable and new information with the addition of a faint but unmistakable trace of, God forbid, an English accent, I find myself brazen enough to blurt out, "Shut up, Carnes, they will not." I down the martini, stolely, while Carnes, looking quite taken aback, stricken almost, turns around to face me, and his bloated head breaks out into an uncertain smile. Someone behind us is saying, "But look what happened to Gecko." Truman Drake pats Harold on the back and asks me, "Is there one suspender width that's more, well, appropriate than others?" Irritably, I push him into the crowd and he disappears. "So, Harold," I say, "did you get my message?" Carnes seems confused at first, and while lighting a cigarette, finally laughs. "Jesus, Davis. Yes, that was hilarious. That was you, was it?" "Yes, naturally." I'm blinking, muttering to myself, really, waving his cigarette smoke away from my face. "Bateman killing Owen and the escort girl?" He keeps chuckling. "Oh, that's bloody marvelous. Really key, as they say at the Groucho Club. Really key." Then, looking dismayed, he adds, "It was a rather long message, no?" I'm smiling idiotically, and then I say, "But what exactly do you mean, Harold?" Secretly thinking to myself that this fat bastard couldn't possibly have gotten into the fucking Groucho Club, and even if he had, to admit it in such a fashion obliterates the fact that his entrance was accepted. "Why, the message you left." Carnes is already looking around the club, waving to various people and bimbos. "By the way, Davis, how is Cynthia?" He accepts a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. You're still seeing her, right? But wait, Harold, what do you mean? I repeat emphatically. He's already bored, neither concerned nor listening, and excusing himself, says, Nothing. Good to see you. Oh my, is that Edward Towers? I crane my neck to look, then turn back to Harold. No, I say. Carnes? Wait. Davis? He sighs, as if patiently trying to explain something to a child. I am not one to badmouth anyone. Your joke was amusing. But come on, man, you had one fatal flaw. Bateman's such a bloody ass-kisser, such a brown-nosing goody-goody that I couldn't fully appreciate it. Otherwise it was amusing. Now let's have lunch. Or we'll have dinner at 150 Worcester or something with McDermott or Preston. A real raver. He tries to move on. Rava? Did you say Rava, Carnes? I'm wide-eyed, feeling wired even though I haven't done any drugs. What are you talking about? Bateman is what? Oh, good God, man, why else would Evelyn Richards dump him? You know, really. He could barely pick up an escort girl, let alone... What was it you said he did to her? Harold is still looking distractedly around the club, and he waves to another couple, raising his champagne glass. Oh yes, chop her up. He starts laughing again, though this time it sounds polite. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must really. Wait, stop, I shout, looking up into Carnes's face, making sure he's listening. You don't seem to understand. You're not really comprehending any of this. I killed him. I did it, Carnes. I chopped Owen's fucking head off. I tortured dozens of girls. That whole message I left on your machine was true. I'm drained, not appearing calm, wondering why this doesn't feel like a blessing to me. Excuse me, he says, trying to ignore my outburst. I really must be going. No, I shout. Now, Carnes, listen to me. Listen very, very carefully. I killed Paul Owen and I liked it, I say maniacally. I can't make myself any clearer. My stress causes me to choke on the words. But that's simply not possible, he says, brushing me off. And I'm not finding this amusing anymore. It never was supposed to be, I bellow, and then, why isn't it possible? It's just not, he says, eyeing me worriedly. Why not? I shout again over the music, though there's really no need to, adding, you stupid bastard, in a condescending way. Now, Donaldson, Carnes says, removing my hand from his arm, if you'll excuse me. Oh, you're excused, I sneer. Then I make my way back to our booth where John Edmonton and Peter Beavers are now sitting, and I numb myself with a halcyon before taking Jean home, back to my place. Jean is wearing something by Oscar de la Renta. Nina Goodrich was wearing a sequined dress by Matsuda and refused to give me her number, even though Jean was in the women's room downstairs. Taxi driver. Another broken scene in what passes for my life occurs on Wednesday, seemingly pointing to someone's fault, though whose I can't be sure. Stuck in gridlock in a cab heading downtown toward Wall Street after a power breakfast at the Regency with Peter Russell, who used to be my dealer before he got a real job, and Eddie Lambert. Russell was wearing a 2-button wool sport coat by Red Alley, a cotton shirt by Hackert, a silk tie by Ritchell, pleated wool trousers by Kritsia Uomo, and leather Cole Haan shoes. The Patty Winter show this morning was about girls in the 4th grade who trade sex for crack, and I almost canceled with Lambert and Russell to catch it. Russell ordered for me while I was in the lobby on the phone. It was, unfortunately, a high-fat, high-sodium breakfast, and before I could comprehend what was happening, plates of herbed waffles with ham and Madeira cream sauce, grilled sausages, and sour cream coffee cake were set at our table, and I had to ask the waiter for a pot of decaf herbal tea, a plate of sliced mango with blueberries, and a bottle of Evian. In the early morning light that poured through the windows at the Regency, I watched as our waiter shaved black truffles gracefully over Lambert's steaming eggs. Overcome, I broke down and demanded to have the black truffles shaved over my mango slices. Nothing much happened during the breakfast. I had to make another phone call, and when I returned to our table, I noticed that a mango slice was missing, but I didn't accuse anyone. I had other things on my mind. How to help America's schools, the Trust Gap desk sets, a new era of possibilities, and what's in it for me getting tickets to see Sting and the Threepenny Opera, which just opened on Broadway, how to take more and remember less. In the cab, I'm wearing a double-breasted cashmere and wool overcoat by Studio 000, one from Foray, a wool suit with pleated trousers by de Rigueur from Schoenemann, a silk tie by Givenchy Gentleman, socks by Interwoven, shoes by Armani, reading the Wall Street Journal with my Ray-Ban sunglasses on and listening to a Walkman with a Bix Beiderbecke tape playing in it. I put down the journal, pick up the Post, just to check page 6. At the light on 7th and 34th. In the cab next to this one sits, I think, Kevin Gladwin, wearing a suit by Ralph Lauren. I lower my sunglasses. Kevin looks up from the new issue of Money magazine and spots me looking over at him in a curious way before his cab moves forward in the traffic. The cab I'm in suddenly breaks free of the gridlock and turns right on 27th, taking the West Side Highway down to Wall Street. I put the paper down, concentrate on the music and the weather, how unseasonably cool it is, and I'm just beginning to notice the way the cab driver looks at me in the rearview mirror. A suspicious, hungry expression keeps changing the features on his face. A mass of clogged pores, ingrown hairs. I sigh, expecting this, ignoring him. Open the hood of a car and it will tell you something about the people who designed it is just one of many phrases I'm tortured by. But the driver knocks on the plexiglass divider, motions to me. While taking the Walkman off, I notice he's locked all the doors. I see the locks lower in a flash, hear the hollow clicking noise the moment I turn the volume off. The cab is speeding faster than it should down the highway, in the far right lane. Yes, I ask, irritably. What? Hey, don't I know you? He asks in a thick, barely penetrable accent that could easily be either New Jersey or Mediterranean. No. I start putting the Walkman back on. You look familiar, he says. What's your name? No, I don't. You don't either, I say. Then an afterthought. Chris Hagen. Come on. He's smiling like there's something wrong. I know who you are. I'm in a movie. I'm an actor, I tell him. A model. Nah, that's not it, he says grimly. Well, I lean over, checking his name. Abdullah, do you have a membership at MK? He doesn't answer. I reopen the post to a photo of the mayor dressed as a pineapple, then close it again and rewind the tape in my Walkman. I start counting to myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. My eyes focus in on the meter. Why didn't I carry a gun with me this morning? Because I didn't think I had to. The only weapon on me is a used knife from last night. No, he says again. I've seen your face somewhere. Finally, exasperated, I ask, trying to appear casual. You have? Really? Interesting. Just watch the road, Abdullah. There's a long, scary pause while he stares at me in the rearview mirror, and the grim smile fades. His face is blank. He says, I know. Man, I know who you are. And he's nodding, his mouth drawn tight. The radio that was tuned into the news is shut off. There's a long, scary pause while he stares at me in the rearview mirror, and the grim smile fades. His face is blank. He says, I know. Man, I know who you are. And he's nodding, his mouth drawn tight. The radio that was tuned into the news is shut off. Buildings pass by in a gray-red blur. The cab passes other cabs. The sky changes color from blue to purple to black back to blue. At another light, a red one he races straight through, we pass on the other side of the West Side Highway, a new D'Agostino's on the corner where Mars used to be, and it moves me to tears, almost because it's something that's identifiable, and I get as nostalgic for the market, even though it's not one I will ever shop at, as I have about anything, and I almost interrupt the driver, tell him to pull over, have him let me out, let him keep the change from a 10, no, a 20, but I can't move because he's driving too fast and something intervenes, something unthinkable and ludicrous, and I hear him say it, maybe. You're the guy who killed Solly. His face is locked into a determined grimace. As with everything else, the following happens very quickly, though it feels like an endurance test. I swallow, lower my sunglasses, and tell him to slow down before asking, Who, may I ask, is Sally? Man, your face is on a wanted poster downtown, he says, unflinching. I think I would like to stop here. I manage to croak out, You're the guy, right? He's looking at me like I'm some kind of viper. Another cab, its light on, empty, cruises past ours, going at least 80. I'm not saying anything, just shaking my head. I am going to take... I swallow, trembling, open my leather datebook, pull out a Mont Blanc pen from my Bottega Veneta briefcase. Your license number down. You kill Solly, he says, definitely recognizing me from somewhere, cutting another denial on my part by growling, You son of a bitch. Near the docks downtown, he swerves off the highway and races the cab toward the end of a deserted parking area, and it hits me somewhere. Now, this moment, when he drives into and then over a dilapidated, rust-covered aluminum fence heading toward water, that all I have to do is put the Walkman on, blot out the sound of the cab driver, but my hands are twisted into paralyzed fists that I can't unclench, held captive in the cab as it hurtles toward a destination only the cab driver, who is obviously deranged, knows. The windows are rolled down partially, and I can feel the cool morning air drying the mousse on my scalp. I feel naked, suddenly tiny. My mouth tastes metallic, then it gets worse. My vision, a winter road. But I'm left with one comforting thought. I am rich. Millions are not. You've incorrectly identified me, I'm saying. He stops the cab and turns around toward the back seat. He's holding a gun, the make of which I don't recognize. I'm staring at him, my quizzical expression changing into something else. The watch, the Rolex, he says simply. I listen, silent, squirming in my seat. He repeats, the watch. Is this some kind of prank? I ask. Get out, he spits. Get the fuck out of the car. I stare past the driver's head, out the windshield, at gulls flying low over the dark, wavy water, and opening the door, I step out of the cab, cautiously, no sudden moves. It's a cold day. My breath steams. Wind picks it up, swirls it around. The watch, you scumbag, he says, leaning out the window, the gun aimed at my head. Listen, I don't know what you think you're doing or what you're exactly trying to accomplish, or what it is you think you're going to be able to do. I've never been fingerprinted. I have alibis. Shut up, Abdullah growls, cutting me off. Just shut your fucking mouth. I am innocent, I shout with utter conviction. The watch! He cocks the gun. I unhook the Rolex and, sliding it off my wrist, hand it to him. Wallet! He motions with his gun. Just the cash. Helplessly, I take out my new gazelle skin wallet and quickly, my fingers freezing numb, hand him the cash, which amounts to only $300 since I didn't have time to stop at an automated teller before the power breakfast. Solly, I'm guessing, was the cab driver I killed during the chase scene last fall, even though that guy was Armenian. I suppose I could have killed another one, and I'm just not recalling this particular incident. What are you going to do? I ask. Isn't there a reward of some kind? No reward, he mutters, shuffling the bills with one hand, the gun still pointed at me in the other. How do you know I'm not going to call you in and get your license revoked? I ask, handing over a knife I just found in my pocket that looks as if it was dipped into a bowl of blood and hair. Because you're guilty, he says. And then, get that away from me, waving the gun at the stained knife. Like you know, I mutter angrily. At Harry's. On a Friday evening, a group of us have left the office early, finding ourselves at Harry's. Group consists of Tim Price, Craig McDermott, myself, Preston Goodrich, who is currently dating a total hardbody named, I think, Plum. No last name, just Plum, an actress/model, which I have a feeling we all think is pretty hip. We're having a debate over where to make reservations for dinner. Flamingo East, Oyster Bar, 220, Counterlife, Michael's, Spago East, Le Cirque. Robert Farrell is here too, the Lotus Quotrek, a portable stock quotation device in front of him on the table, and he's pushing buttons while the latest commodities flash by. What are people wearing? McDermott has on a cashmere sport coat, wool trousers, a silk tie, Hermes. Farrell is wearing a cashmere vest, leather shoes, wool cavalry twill trousers, Garrick Anderson. I'm wearing a wool suit by Armani, shoes by Allen Edmonds, pocket square by Brooks Brothers. Someone else has on a suit tailored by Anderson and Shepard. Someone who looks like Todd Lauder and may in fact be gives thumbs up from across the room, etc., etc. Questions are routinely thrown my way, among them. Are the rules for wearing a pocket square the same as for a white dinner jacket? Is there any difference at all between boat shoes and topsiders? My futon has already flattened out and it's uncomfortable to sleep on. What can I do? How does one judge the quality of compact discs before buying them? What tie knot is less bulky than a Windsor? How can one maintain a sweater's elasticity? Any tips on buying a shearling coat? I am, of course, thinking about other things, asking myself my own questions. Am I a fitness junkie? Man versus conformity? Can I get a date with Cindy Crawford? Does being a Libra signify anything, and if so, can you prove it? Today I was obsessed with the idea of faxing Sarah's blood I drained from her vagina over to her office in the mergers division at Chase Manhattan, and I didn't work out this morning because I'd made a necklace from the bones of some girl's vertebrae and wanted to stay home and wear it around my neck while I masturbated in the white marble tub in my bathroom, grunting and moaning like some kind of animal. Then I watched a movie about 5 lesbians and 10 vibrators. Favorite group? Talking Heads. Drink, J&B, or Absolute on the rocks. TV show, Late Night with David Letterman. Soda, Diet Pepsi, water, Evian, sport, baseball. The conversation follows its own rolling accord. No real structure or topic or internal logic or feeling. Except, of course, for its own hidden, conspiratorial one. Just words. And like in a movie, but one that has been transcribed improperly, most of it overlaps. I'm having a sort of hard time paying attention because my automated teller has started speaking to me, sometimes actually leaving weird messages on the screen in green lettering like, cause a terrible scene at Sotheby's, or kill the president, or feed me a stray cat. And I was freaked out by the park bench that followed me for 6 blocks last Monday evening, and it too spoke to me. Disintegration. I'm taking it in stride. Yet the only question I can muster up at first, and add to the conversation, is a worried, I'm not going anywhere if we don't have a reservation someplace, so do we have a reservation someplace or not? I notice that we're all drinking dry beers. Am I the only one who notices this? I'm also wearing mock tortoiseshell glasses that are non-prescription. On the TV screen in Harry's is the Patty Winter Show, which is now on in the afternoon, and is up against Geraldo Rivera, Phil Donahue, and Oprah Winfrey. Today's topic is, does economic success equal happiness? The answer in Harry's this afternoon is a roar of resounding definitely, followed by much hooting, the guys all cheering together in a friendly way. On the screen now are scenes from President Bush's inauguration early this year, then a speech from former President Reagan, while Patty delivers a hard-to-hear commentary. Soon a tiresome debate forms over whether he's lying or not, even though we can't hear the words. The first and really only one to complain is Price, who, though I think he's bothered by something else, uses this opportunity to vent his frustration, looks inappropriately stunned, asks, "How can he lie like that? How can he pull that shit?" "Oh, Christ," I moan. "What shit? Now where do we have reservations at? I mean, I'm not really hungry, but I would like to have reservations somewhere. How about 220? An afterthought. "McDermott, how did that rate in the newsigates?" "No way," Farrell complains before Craig can answer. "The Coke I scored there last time was cut with so much laxative I actually had to take a shit in MK. Yeah, life sucks and then you die." "Low point of the night," Farrell mutters. "Weren't you with Korea the last time you were there?" Goodrich asks. "Wasn't that the low point?" "She caught me on call waiting. What could I do?" Farrell shrugs. I apologize. "Caught him on call waiting." McDermott nudges me, dubious. "Shut up, McDermott," Farrell says, snapping Craig's suspenders. "Date a beggar." "You forgot something, Farrell," Preston mentions. "McDermott is a beggar." "How's Courtney?" Farrell asks Craig, leering. "Just say no." Someone laughs. Price looks away from the television screen, then at Craig, and he tries to hide his displeasure by asking me, waving at the TV. I don't believe it. He looks so normal. He seems so out of it, so undangerous. Bimbo, someone says. Bypass. He is totally harmless, you geek, was totally harmless, just like you are totally harmless, but he did do all that shit, and you have failed to get us into 150, so, what can I say? McDermott shrugs. I just don't get how anyone can appear that way yet be involved in such total shit, Price says, ignoring Craig, averting his eyes from Farrell. He takes out a cigar and studies it sadly. To me, it still looks like there's a smudge on Price's forehead. Because Nancy was right behind him? Farrell guesses, looking up from the Quotrek. Because Nancy did it? How can you be so cool about it? Price, to whom something really eerie has obviously happened, sounds genuinely perplexed. Rumor has it that he was in rehab. Some guys are just born cool, I guess. Farrell smiles, shrugging. I'm laughing at this answer since Farrell is so obviously uncool. And Price shoots me a reprimanding look, says, "And Bateman, what are you so fucking zany about?" I shrug too. "I'm just a happy camper." And I add, remembering, quoting my brother, "Rocking and a rolling. Be all that you can be," someone adds. Oh, brother. Price won't let it die. "Look," he starts, trying for a rational appraisal of the situation. He presents himself as a harmless old codger, but inside, he stops. My interest picks up, flickers briefly. But inside, Price can't finish the sentence, can't add the last 2 words he needs. Doesn't matter. I'm both disappointed and relieved for him. "Inside? Yes, inside?" Craig asks, bored. "Believe it or not, we're actually listening to you. Go on." "Bateman," Price says, relenting slightly. "Come on, what do you think?" I look up, smile, don't say anything. From somewhere, the TV, the national anthem plays. Why? I don't know. Before a commercial, maybe. Tomorrow on the Patty Winters show, doormen from Nell's. Where are they now? I sigh, shrug, whatever. That's a pretty good answer, Price says, then adds, You're a real nut. That is the most valuable piece of information I've heard since. I look at my new gold Rolex that insurance paid for. McDermott suggested we all drink dry beers. Christ, I want a scotch. McDermott looks up with an exaggerated grin and purrs. Bud, long neck, beautiful. Very civilized. Goodrich nods. Super stylish English guy Nigel Morrison stops by our table, and he's wearing a flower in the lapel of his Paul Smith jacket. But he can't stay long since he has to meet other British friends, Ian and Lucy, at Delmonico's. Seconds after he walks away, I hear someone sneer, Nigel, a pate animal. Someone else, did you know that caveman got more fiber than we do? Who's handling the Fisher account? Screw that. What about the Shepherd thing, the Shepherd account? Is that David Monroe? What a burnout. Oh, brother. For Christ's sakes. Lean and mean. What's in it for me? The Shepherd play or the Shepherd account? Rich people with cheap stereos? No, girls who can hold their liquor. Total lightweight. Need a light? Nice matches. What's in it for me? Yep. I think it's me who says, I have to return some videotapes. Someone has already taken out a Minolta cellular phone and called for a car, and then, when I'm not really listening, watching instead someone who looks remarkably like Marcus Halberstam paying a check, someone asks, simply not in relation to anything, why? And though I'm very proud that I have cold blood and that I can keep my nerve and do what I'm supposed to do, I catch something, then realize it. Why? And automatically answering out of the blue for no reason, just opening my mouth, words coming out, summarizing for the idiots. Well, though I know I should have done that instead of not doing it, I'm 27 for Christ's sakes, and this is, how life presents itself in a bar or in a club in New York, maybe anywhere, at the end of the century, and how people, me, behave. And this is what being Patrick means to me, I guess. So, well, yep, and this is followed by a sigh, then a slight shrug and another sigh. And above one of the doors, covered by red velvet drapes in Harry's, is a sign, and on the sign in letters that match the drape's color are the words, This is not an exit.